of two.
Era muy buen padre, la verdad.
He was extremely hardworking, very likable, very personable.
Is ruthlessly killed outside his home.
There was numerous gunshot wounds to his upper torso.
Whoever shot the victim was extremely angry and was sending a message.
Detectives hunt a cold-blooded murderer.
We identified the weapon as an AK-47.
He received a text message that said, "Nobody messes with me."
People were fearing for their lives because the killer was still out there.
The question starts to creep in of, is this one that may never be solved?
Then, one phone call changes everything.
He said that he was in fear for his life, for what he was going to tell us.
We thought, wow, this is the first break that we've had.
Exposing a killer no one saw coming.
It hit you in the gut. It was somebody that you just never really would have expected.
Le quitó un padre y a mí la mitad de mi corazón.
Mammoth Lakes, California, a pristine ski town in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
People come out here to vacation. They come out here to go skiing, snowboarding, and in the summer months, it's hiking, bicycling, fishing.
It's beautiful, the weather's always sunny. There's always an outdoor aspect that is just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen.
One early fall morning in 2016 turns into a nightmare for the town of Mammoth.
Mammoth Lakes Police Department received a 911 call at approximately 1:50 in the morning, reporting just hearing a series of rapid gunfire and that a neighbor across the street had been shot.
Police and first responders raced to the scene.
Patrol officers found the victim lying in the driveway, and he was lying face down in his own blood.
You had an individual who'd been shot multiple times and the victim's wife standing there, and she's hysterical.
Y yo quise abrazar a Omar, me acuerdo. Y alguien dijo, no lo toques, no lo toques. Yo le dije, pero ¿y por qué no? Si es mi esposo. Quiero saber que él esté bien.
Paramedics arrive and try to resuscitate the victim.
La ambulancia llegó rápido, pero como Omar recibió muchos disparos en el cuerpo, Omar ya había muerto cuando ellos llegaron.
Police learn the victim is 35-year-old Omar Hernandez, and a homicide investigation is launched.
When I arrived on scene, I've never seen anything like that. Omar had approximately 15 gunshot wounds to his body.
There were bullet impact marks all over. In total, there was 30 shell casings that were found.
The victim was laying alongside his vehicle. There was numerous gunshot wounds to his upper torso. His vehicle was still running, coffee cup still laying there, all indications that he was getting ready to go somewhere.
What was also noticed was there were divots that were in the asphalt and in the driveway.
We definitely got the feeling that as the victim laid there, he was continuously being shot.
I felt like it was extremely personal. Whoever shot the victim was extremely angry and was sending a message.
The shell casings provide another surprising but valuable clue.
The caliber of the bullet that was used, that only comes from a high-powered assault rifle.
It was a 7.6 millimeter round, so we believed it had to be an AK-47. To have a weapon of that sort here in Mammoth, I thought was extremely unusual because those are assault weapons. Those are not hunting rifles.
We thought it was potentially gang-related, possibly some sort of hit that somebody definitely wanted to get the job done.
Could this have been a planned execution? Detectives try to speak with Omar's wife, Gladys.
Gladys was hysterical, extremely upset, unable to talk, and she was screaming.
Estaba devastada por mi dolor, devastada por el dolor de saber que Omar había muerto. Y estaba, pues, perdida porque decía, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué le hicieron esto a Omar?
Born in 1980, Omar was raised by a single mother in Guadalajara, Mexico, but knew his destiny lay elsewhere.
El sueño de Omar era exacto, venir a Estados Unidos, porque sabía que aquí había más oportunidades. Su visión era crecer, salir adelante y sacar adelante a su mamá.
When Omar was 18 years old, he headed to Mammoth on the advice of a friend, and for 8 years had been successfully working his way up at the same company.
Omar had a good job here in Mammoth. He was a supervisor at the Vaughn's grocery store, which is the main grocery store in Mammoth Lakes.
He was extremely hardworking, very likable, very personable.
At work, Omar was known to be a kind and caring, almost big brother figure to a lot of the employees that he supervised. He took them under his wing and really tried to help them feel like they belonged.
In 2006, Omar met Gladys Gastelum, and romance quickly blossomed.
Lo conocí y amor a primera vista. Sentí que era una gran persona, un hombre increíble.
Omar and Gladys started a family, welcoming the arrival of 2 sons.
Omar, como padre, era fantástico. Era muy, muy buen padre, la verdad.
The young family had a bright future, starting with an event planned for just days after Omar's murder.
Venía toda mi familia de México. Íbamos a bautizar a Mateo. Yo estaba emocionada por el bautizo de mi hijo y porque venía toda mi familia.
Instead of a celebration, Omar's loved ones must now organize a funeral. Looking for answers, detectives questioned Gladys about the hours leading up to the shooting.
She had gone to visit a family member, and Omar stayed home, and she came home right around 10 or 10:30 p.m. that night, and Omar was sleeping.
He was trying to get a good night's sleep before the night shift.
According to Gladys, at approximately 1:30 in the morning, Omar had gotten up, made himself some coffee, and went outside to start the car, to warm it up.
Omar siempre entraba a despedirse y me dio un beso y me dijo, te amo.
And then shortly after he exited the back door to go to work, she heard the loud gunfire that made her jump up.
Se escucha una ráfaga de muchos disparos y yo me paro asustada. Yo nada más pedí a Dios que no fueran para Omar, que cuidara a Omar porque iba saliendo de mi casa.
So she got dressed really quick, ran outside, and that's when she saw Omar lying face down in the driveway.
Y empiezo a gritar ayuda, por ayuda, ayuda, ayuda. Y le dije al vecino, llama al 911, porque Omar no está bien, algo le hicieron a Omar. Le dije que le dispararon a Omar.
When police ask if anyone held a grudge against Omar, Gladys's response is immediate.
The name of Saul Morales came up. Saul Morales had a problem with Omar because Saul had always accused Omar of having an extramarital affair with his wife, Rosalinda, who was also an employee at the Vaughn supermarket.
About a year or so before the murder occurred, investigators learned that Saul had actually gone to Omar and Gladys's home trying to confront Omar over whether these affair rumors were true.
There were disputes between Omar and Saul.
Gladys tells investigators that Saul's behavior had been disturbing.
Saul had confronted her, told her that my wife is having an affair with your husband.
She noticed that he had been driving by the house on a regular basis.
Gladys says she had seen Saul drive by her house as recently as just 3 days before Omar was killed. Things became so bad, Gladys tells police that Omar filed a restraining order against Saul.
That was an attempt for Omar to get Saul to stop coming to his house, stop contacting his wife.
Could Saul's jealous rage have driven him to murder?
Gladys indicated that she was afraid of Saul, and she thought maybe he was so upset over this alleged affair that he possibly could have killed Omar.
And so Saul became a person of interest pretty quickly. At that moment, we felt like, okay, maybe this is the guy.
Coming up, investigators uncover a menacing grudge.
He hated Omar.
He was there to teach Omar a lesson.
Not his motive to murder somebody.
and shocking clues.
The sedan pulled over near where the crime scene occurred.
It was the same vehicle that we'd seen in the video surveillance.
The shell casings recovered were fired from the same gun.
Before a surprise confession reveals a cold-blooded killer.
He described how he just continued to shoot.
Nunca imaginé que él hubiera hecho algo tan desgarrador, algo tan triste.
That was alarming. I knew right then it was huge.
Hours after 35-year-old father of two, Omar Hernandez, was gunned down in his own driveway, his wife Gladys has pointed police towards a possible killer.
Saul Morales was the first suspect in this case because his wife, Rosalinda, had reportedly been having an affair with Omar.
We found out that Saul confronted Omar about the affair.
Saul told Omar to leave his wife alone.
Omar was upset that Saul had come over to his house while his kids were home.
There was a fight that broke out between them and police were called.
Officers arrived on scene and they were separated. No charges were filed, but there still was a documented incident. Gladys did not believe that Omar really did have an affair with Rosalinda. But the important thing was if Saul believed it to be true, then that is motive to murder somebody.
Needing more information about the alleged affair, investigators head to Omar's workplace.
The coworkers described Omar as a nice guy that got along with everybody.
The manager described Omar as a very hardworking person dedicated to the job, was that employee that worked over and beyond what was required of him.
The manager did tell me that he had heard the rumors about Rosalinda and Omar's extramarital relationship. And also, he did bring up the fact that at times he would see Saul in Vons walking through the aisles as though he wanted to catch Omar and Rosalinda together.
Learning Saul's wife, Rosalinda, happens to be working her shift at the store, detectives pull her aside for an interview.
She was very, very emotional.
Rosalinda found out about the murder when she came in to work and became very upset.
Investigators confront Rosalinda about the rumors.
Rosalinda denied that there was ever an affair or that there was any sexual relations between her and Omar.
She said that her and Omar's relationship was purely platonic and that her and him had been best friends, and that's the extent of their relationship.
Rosalinda definitely gave me the sense that she was nervous.
In talking to Rosalinda, she appeared to be holding back.
At this point, investigators weren't sure whether the affair was a rumor or whether it was true.
It seemed like the jealousy involved in the case could have been enough for murder. When you see a murder that gruesome, with that many bullets and that much violence, it comes out of some strong emotion.
Police know that even if Saul had motive for murder, he also needed the opportunity.
We asked Rosalinda where Saul was the previous night, and Rosalinda said that Saul was in bed with her the whole night, and then she ended up getting up for work around 3 that morning, and he was still in bed.
I wouldn't say that that particular alibi was rock solid, so interviewing him was very important, just to find out if their stories matched.
Investigators bring Saul down to the station.
When I interviewed Saul, he was extremely calm, extremely courteous, and extremely cooperative.
He was very forthcoming about the altercations that had occurred with Omar in the past, and that he was afraid that Omar had had an affair with his wife.
Investigators ask Saul to account for his movements in the hours leading up to the murder.
Saul claimed that he had gone to visit his uncle, and he was with his uncle throughout the night before coming home, and went to bed right around 11 o'clock that evening.
He said that he was asleep in his bed on the night of the murder and had nothing to do with it. He voluntarily provided a DNA reference sample to exclude him.
Getting DNA from Saul was extremely important because he was a prime suspect in the shooting. And because with fingerprints coming off the bullet casings, you could match the DNA.
Saul also allows detectives to search his home.
I searched the house for weapons, ammunition, or any evidence that could tie him to the crime. But I never found anything that would lead me to believe he had weapons or ammunition in the house.
When the results come in, Saul's DNA does not match the DNA found on the spent shell casings.
His story seemed to be making sense. It seemed to be consistent. There was no indicators that he was lying to us.
And so we didn't have anything to really move on.
I didn't find him to be suspicious. He just wasn't connecting the dots for me. And from my training and experience, he did not give me any indication that he was involved in the shooting. And so that was really frustrating.
With detectives forced to put Saul on the back burner, they revisit the theory that Omar's murder could have been a professional hit.
The weapon used, the AK-47, it's a weapon of murder, a weapon of violence. And so the nature of that weapon alone made people think this has something to do with a gang.
Because of the brutal nature of the crime, something we were looking at, is this the cartel? Is this a paid hit? It's gotta be big because of the way it was done.
Police investigating the ruthless shooting of Omar Hernandez outside his home in Mammoth Lakes, California, now suspect he might have been targeted by a criminal gang.
There was speculation that maybe this was a drug deal that went bad and the cartel had come up and put a hit on Omar. Investigators went looking through Omar's background to see if there was any drug affiliations or anything that could have been tied to organized crime.
I didn't find anything in Omar's background that would indicate he had any gang association whatsoever.
No pertenecía a pandillas, él era una persona tranquila, no usaba drogas, no usaba nada.
Investigators move on from the gangland hit theory. Several days later, they discover their security camera footage from a building near Omar's home and hope the video will provide new leads.
The closest camera that had any video surveillance was several hundred yards down the street, so you were capturing vehicles coming and going.
Unfortunately, there were no cameras that were able to actually capture the crime as it occurred.
What the security footage documented was a vehicle circling the area several times prior to the shooting.
We had what we believed was a light-colored four-door sedan. We felt pretty confident that it was a Toyota Camry or Toyota Corolla. We felt like that vehicle possibly was involved.
Police spot another suspicious vehicle in the footage.
There was a red sedan-type vehicle that was seen at the intersection driving down towards the victim residence.
What was notable was it appeared less than 2 minutes prior to when the murder took place, and then the sedan pulled over near where the crime scene occurred.
Unfortunately, with the low image quality, we weren't able to identify who was in the suspect vehicles.
Undeterred, police show the footage to Omar's wife, hoping she can identify the vehicles. The red sedan provokes a strong reaction.
Gladys said that the day after the shooting, a red sedan drove by with two people inside of it that she recognized as Vaughn's employees. She did say that they gave her a slow roll type of look, as though letting her know they were watching her, or maybe even they were involved.
Sentí miedo en ese momento porque cuando ellos pasan manejando y luego le hacen así, yo sentí mucho temor, sentí miedo.
Gladys told investigators that the two individuals in the car were Jose Antonio Correas Vasquez and Eliud Correas Vasquez. They were cousins. Gladys knew Eliud and Jose Antonio as co-workers of Omar's.
At the time, their reputation was that they were MS-13 gang members from El Salvador.
Detectives head to Vaughn's to talk with Jose Antonio and Eliud's co-workers.
Employees did tell me that Omar was the supervisor for the Salvadorians, and it appeared that they didn't like Omar, they didn't like taking orders from him.
Investigators learned that Omar had been promoted to a management position a few months before his murder, and that there was constant friction between him and Eliud.
Eliud and Omar did not get along. In fact, there had actually been an incident between the two of them where Eliud had been sent home for not doing his job properly.
Eliud became so upset that he contacted the union and made a formal complaint against Omar.
Did Eliud take matters into his own hands with deadly consequences? There's one more detail about him that raises suspicions.
Eliud drove a red sedan, and it seemed to be a possible match to the car that was on the surveillance video. However, when we looked closer at the red sedan and Eliud's red sedan, it was clear immediately that they did not match, and that was not Eliud's car in that surveillance video.
With Eliud looking less likely as the killer, investigators turn their focus to his cousin, Jose Antonio.
He claimed to have some association to some gangs. We subsequently served a search warrant at his residence. We did find assault weapons, although they ended up being imitation airsoft-type weapons, so obviously they weren't involved in the actual murder itself.
We didn't find any definitive ties to Salvadorian gangs. I think it was just their bravado, and they had a heavy reputation, and they knew people were afraid of them.
Without anything concrete linking Jose Antonio or Eliud to Omar's death, detectives are forced to move on.
That was just super frustrating. It just seemed like at every corner there was something that we thought was going to really point us in the right direction and really break the case open for us, and it just was another dead end.
Just as the case threatens to hit a wall, investigators scouring Omar's cell phone activity make a jaw-dropping discovery.
And combing through thousands and thousands of text messages, we did find many text messages where he and Rosalinda spoke to each other, and it became very clear that the rumors of the affair were definitely true. It also became apparent that not only was there an affair with Rosalinda, but that Gladys knew about the affair.
That was a cause for concern because initially the affair was denied by all parties at first when the investigation began.
The texts force investigators to rethink everything. Why did Gladys and Rosalinda lie? Were either of them trying to cover up for a crime? And had Saul learned the truth and done the unthinkable?
There was a lot of evidence that showed that there were enough emotional ties involved in that somebody could be angry enough to kill someone based off of that infidelity.
Weeks have passed since father of two, Omar Hernandez, was brutally gunned down. Detectives have just obtained proof a rumored affair between Omar and coworker Rosalinda did actually take place.
Omar was involved romantically with Rosalinda, and through cell phone forensics, we located text messages that definitely confirmed that Omar had a conversation with Gladys as well about the affair that confirmed that she knew about it.
Gladys had previously told police there was nothing to the rumored affair, so investigators had to speak to her again.
When we asked Gladys about the affair, she broke down crying, and she confirmed the rumors to be true.
Gladys described how she found out about the affair with Rosalinda back in 2014. She had returned home early from a trip to Mexico, and when she came back to their house, Omar wasn't there, but there was burned wax and rose petals on the bed, on the floor around it, and she knew they weren't for her. So a couple days after, she ended up going through her husband's phone and found the text messages between Omar and Rosalinda, which confirmed to her that he had an affair.
Detectives asked Gladys why she lied to them before. What was she trying to hide?
Her reasoning behind lying about the affair was simply to protect Omar's reputation. He had a good reputation, and she wanted to maintain that. And also, according to Gladys, they were working through their problems to keep their family together.
She just didn't want to have anything negative to say about her husband. He'd been brutally murdered. She kind of wanted to leave it at that. Let's investigate and try to figure out the person responsible.
Police are also curious why Rosalinda had been untruthful and bring her into the station.
And told her we knew that she did have an affair with Omar. She told us that she lied because she was embarrassed about it, but also that she didn't want to inflame things with Saul.
We asked her whether he knew about the affair or not. She confirmed that he did know about it. She was definitely concerned about her husband.
I asked her flat out if she believed that Saul may have killed Omar, and her answer to my question was, I don't believe he pulled the trigger. So of course that was alarming. I thought maybe I missed something at the beginning and that there was a potential that Saul may have actually even hired someone to kill Omar. It presents difficulty because then you have to backtrack and look at the initial suspect once again and make sure you haven't overlooked anything.
Investigators re-look at Saul, but after combing through phone records and texts, find no evidence he hired anyone to kill Omar or that he committed the crime himself.
At this point, the evidence did not bear fruit that Saul was the suspect we were looking for. His alibi checked out. There was nothing else that ever came up that pointed him as being the one who did this.
Saul is cleared once again. With yet another busted lead and no arrest in sight, police have to contend with the fear that's gripping Mammoth Lakes.
It was pretty hard for the community to have all these investigations going on and talk of murder and gossip of violence and the things that led to it, but no answers, just dead ends. I think people genuinely were fearing for their lives because the killer was still out there.
Afectó a la comunidad porque todos vivían en pánico, porque todos se preguntaban por qué pasó esto, por qué en un pueblo tan chico, donde nunca había pasado nada así. No había explicación y pienso que la gente sí tuvo miedo.
Despite months of tireless work, investigators run out of leads.
The case essentially went cold. There was nothing to indicate any one person was responsible.
At this point, we're well over a year into the investigation, and the question starts to creep in of, is this one that may never be solved? It starts to weigh on you because we've formed relationships with Gladys and we want nothing more than to bring justice for her family.
It definitely wears on you as an investigator. You constantly ask yourself, what did I miss? There's got to be something there that I missed.
Fue uno de los puntos más difíciles para mí también. Pero siempre tuve fe de que algún día, dije, así pasen años, se va a solucionar porque no puede quedar la muerte de Omar impune. De esa manera como él murió, no puede quedar así.
We had always been feeling that if we could just get that one piece of information that could lead us to the suspect, we'll develop the rest. But we needed somebody to come forward and give us a break that we needed to solve that case.
2.5 years later, detectives receive just that. An explosive phone call that upends the whole case.
In June 2019, a person called and said that they know who killed Omar and has some concerns for their own safety.
In my mind, I felt that that's the big break that we needed. Sometimes that's all it is, one person with information. I knew right then it was huge.
2.5 years since the brutal slaying of Omar Hernandez, an informant has come forward with information that blows the case wide open.
A man by the name of Francisco Ramirez came into our office, and you could tell that something was scaring him. He said that he was in fear for his life, for what he was going to tell us. Francisco started telling us about this individual. His name was Josue Correas Vasquez, and he was a co-worker at Vaughn's. They both worked the night shift.
Francisco worked with Josue, and Josue was actually the brother to Eliud, and he describes this contentious relationship between Omar and Eliud and Josue. Months before the murder, says that they were constantly butting heads with one another, described Eliud and Josue as constantly disrespecting Omar. Omar would delegate tasks that need to be completed, and Eliud and Josue would always be disrespectful and say, well, why do we got to do that? Nah, I don't think so. Was just constantly kind of challenging him.
Josue had actually told Francisco that he hated Omar because he had been disrespected and that he had threatened to fire his whole family, and that he had to take matters into his own hands. Then, just several hours after the murder had occurred, Francisco told us that he received a text message from Josue, and it said something to the effect of, "See, I'm not playing around." And then there was another text message that said, "Nobody messes with me."
When he saw the text message, he felt very strongly that that is Josue's way of telling him he just murdered Omar.
Francisco then divulges another disturbing piece of information.
Francisco told us that he had actually gone shooting with Josue months prior to the murder. They had gone out in the middle of the forest, and that Josue had brought an AK-47 with him and were just shooting targets. When Francisco mentioned AK-47, obviously all of our ears perked up, as that's the weapon we were looking for.
And then several years after Omar was murdered, Francisco became the manager to take Omar's place at Vaughn's. And he's now in a position to where he needs to delegate, and he's now seeing the same disrespectful tone from Josue. At some point in time, he and Josue got into an argument, and Josue says something to the effect of, "Don't make me do to you what I did to Omar."
We asked Francisco why he is now just coming forward 2.5 years after the murder. And Francisco said that he was scared of Josue.
He was concerned for his safety, and he wanted to tell law enforcement about what he knew, because he said, if something is to happen to me, I want you guys to know who's responsible.
Francisco realized, I could be the one that's next, and this guy needs to be stopped.
Detectives contact Gladys to gather more information about the working relationship between Omar and Josue.
Gladys did tell us that when Josue first came to the States, he didn't have a lot of friends, he didn't know very many people, and Omar had taken Josue under his wing.
Omar was kind to him, would bring him food for lunch breaks, really seemed to keep an eye on Josue and care about his well-being.
Siempre le ponía su lunch para que él comiera en Vaughn's, y siempre me decía, oye Gladys, échale más lunch para convivir, para darle a Josue.
Omar and Josue seemed to get along for many months during that time period. But Gladys told us that once Omar was promoted to supervisor, things started to change between Omar and Josue.
Cuando a Omar le dan el puesto, sí sentía que algo había cambiado. La misma relación de amistad ya no era igual.
Omar had a job to do, and as Omar started giving more direction and instructions to Josue, Josue started to be a bit more belligerent towards him, talking back, refusing to do certain things.
There had been reported conflicts between the two, and that Josue had felt like Omar was on a power trip.
They didn't get along at work. They were constantly arguing with one another.
Could a workplace conflict have turned into murder? Investigators pull the employee timesheets for the night Omar was killed.
We went back through the Vaughn's records from that night to see when people clocked in, and we noticed that Josue did not work at all that night. We also looked into what vehicle does Josue drive.
Detectives are hopeful that Josue's car will be a match to one of the two vehicles spotted in the surveillance footage.
We determined that at the time of the murder in 2016, he did in fact own a 2012 silver Toyota Camry. That vehicle, shortly after the murder, had been resold to another individual. So we ended up finding that vehicle down in another part of California, and it was the same vehicle that we'd seen in the video surveillance.
It matched the color and the make and model of what we were looking for.
At that moment, we felt that we had the person responsible for the murder of Omar.
Needing hard evidence to tie Josue to the murder, detectives head to the area where Francisco had witnessed him firing an AK-47.
It wasn't a designated shooting range. It was a dirt road off of a main highway.
We went out to the range where he said that he shot with Josue, and we were actually able to recover 56 cartridges that were just below the dirt. All of these cartridges were extremely important because as we grabbed the first cartridge we saw, it had the same head stamp of the cartridges found at the murder scene. When we found shell casings, it just really hit you in the gut.
We thought, wow, this is the first break that we've had.
Two and a half years after Omar Hernandez was murdered, investigators hope they finally got a break after discovering spent bullet casings that appear to match those recovered from the crime scene.
We found north of 50 expended projectiles in the dirt and sent those casings back to the laboratory for comparison.
After we compared the two casings together, one from the murder scene and one from the shooting range, the lab told us that they were fired from the same gun.
This is huge in an investigation. We have an identified suspect and we have physical evidence.
On January 30th, 2020, Josue Correa Vasquez is arrested for Omar's murder.
After Josue was arrested, we brought him in for an interview. We knew that the shell casings recovered at the crime scene were the same as the shooting range. What we didn't have was a way to tie that in to Josue. So what we decided to do was create a fake DNA profile that would be shown to Josue, and what it said was that we recovered DNA from the shell casings and that it matched somebody of the same age and ethnicity as Josue. The goal of having the DNA profile was in hopes that it would push Josue to tell the truth.
Detectives also use another tactic and make an emotional appeal.
Investigator Callanan actually had a photograph of Omar's children on his desk.
I showed him the kids and I said, these kids, they don't deserve what happened to them. Let's try to give them some closure.
They have no father. They just want answers. They want to know.
Josue stuns investigators with what he says next.
Ese día, como cuando ya el odio ya lo invade, ya siente este día lo voy a hacer.
There was a lot of hate against Omar for my part, and that's why me alone decided to kill him.
It was a monumental moment that we felt, okay, we've got the right guy.
The question remains, why would Josue commit such a heinous crime?
Josue told us he hated Omar. He hated that he would tell him how to do his job. He hated that he'd be tough on him.
He felt that he was disrespected by Omar, and he was there to teach Omar a lesson.
Josue proceeds to tell investigators what happened that fatal night.
You knew that Omar was going to work at 2 in the morning?
He said that he drove by Omar's residence a number of times, confirmed that the vehicle in the video surveillance was in fact his vehicle.
Di vuelta nada para ver si él estaba.
He says he went around the block to see if he was home.
Just before 2 a.m., Josue parked across the street from Omar's home, and he waited for him to come out.
Cuando ya lo vi que él venía saliendo, entonces iba rápido.
He saw Omar come out of his residence, and that was the moment that he'd been waiting for. He grabbed the AK-47. When Omar went to the driver's side of the door to leave, Josue emerged from the trees and yelled at him, "You don't look so invincible now, do you?" and described shooting him several times.
Eso fue lo que le dijo, que no era invencible. Que no era invencible.
He described the look in Omar's face, the surprise, the shock.
How many times did you shoot?
Era mucho el odio. Le disparé todo el cartucho. Como el tercer disparo ya cayó.
¿Y seguiste disparando?
Sí.
He kept firing.
Josue said that after he murdered Omar, he went home, he went to bed. A lot of Josue's interview is matter of fact, which was chilling in and of itself, that you can have murdered somebody and just be talking about it in such an unemotional way.
Josue admits that several days after killing Omar, he told his brother Eliud what he had done.
Eliud was concerned about the murder weapon and whether it could be traced back to Josue. So Eliud took it upon himself to take the AK-47 to the forest and bury it so no one would ever be able to find it.
Based on Josue's confession, police bring in Eliud.
He eventually admitted to us that he did help dispose of the gun and gave us the details about where it was, and he pointed to the exact location where the firearm would be recovered.
So we dug right there and sure enough found an AK-47.
At this point, it's kind of a prosecutor's dream. We have a confession statement from the defendant, and the murder weapon that we never thought we would recover just showed up.
For his part in the crime, Eliud is sentenced to a year in jail.
Eliud was charged as being an accessory after the fact. He was charged for helping dispose of the murder weapon and not telling authorities about it.
On January 18th, 2022, Josue is sentenced to 2 life terms in prison for the murder of Omar Hernandez.
El día de la sentencia sentí paz porque se estaba haciendo justicia de la muerte de Omar. Nunca imaginé que Josue hubiera hecho eso. Tan desgarrador, algo tan triste.
The biggest surprise was that it was somebody that you just never really would have expected. Omar had taken Josue under his wing. By all accounts, Omar cared very much about Josue.
That's what was so troubling in this case. Omar lost his life, was brutally murdered for no reason other than he was a hard-working individual who had expectations.
A mis hijos les quitó un padre y a mí la mitad de mi corazón. Eso nos arrancó Josue.
Omar's family still feels the deep impact of his loss.
Sé que desde el cielo él me da esas fuerzas. Vio que lo recuerdo mucho en el momento de que donde yo necesito recargar mi cabeza en su hombro, donde ocupo el abrazo que me diga, todo va a estar bien, Gladys, no te preocupes, y que me haga así. Esos momentos extraño mucho de él.
An ambitious young woman loved by the community.
Everyone was friends with Terry.
She was hardworking, had 2 jobs.
By 21, she owned a home.
Has her future ripped away.
This was a particularly brutal attack.
They stabbed her multiple times on that road.
This would have been a horrifying death.
Police discover unwanted admirers prone to violence.
He was covered in blood and had blood in his hair.
And always carrying a knife.
He was jealous and said that he'd kill her.
But the evidence leads nowhere.
The investigation is getting older and older and harder to solve.
I didn't think we were going to get an answer for this case.
Until a surprise breakthrough.
I was beyond excited. I actually shouted, "Oh my God," at my desk.
Points to a killer off the radar.
Right away, I'm like, who's that guy?
Why?
Why did someone do this?
People said, oh, no, he wouldn't kill anybody, but he had this pretend life.
He had no criminal record. He did not emerge as a likely suspect at all.
Germantown, Wisconsin, a sleepy village celebrated as one of the best places to live in America.
I grew up in Germantown. It's, a small community. I would ride my bike to the store for my mom. It was not someplace that you were afraid of.
Germantown is a small town near Milwaukee, a lot of farmland, a lot of open spaces, just a lot of dairy farming, some factories, and homes.
But on May 28, 1999, this bedroom community wakes to a horrific crime.
Yeah, I have a body up here on River Lane. There's a green car there, green Pontiac car. She's laying by the curb. There's blood on the road.
I got a phone call that there was a suspected homicide in the industrial park. I immediately went to the crime scene. I saw a vehicle on the side of the road facing west, a large amount of blood in the roadway. I observed what appeared to be footwear impressions in blood. I saw what appeared to be drag marks of blood, 2 large pools of blood, and alongside the vehicle was a female lying face down. When we rolled her over, she had a significant number of what appeared to be stab wounds on her front. She had stab wounds on both sides of her neck.
She had some blood on her hands, and we're always hoping that there's a fight so she can either scratch the attacker. So the hands were swabbed for DNA.
We proceeded with the perspective. She may have not been expecting it, and things went south very, very fast. I do believe there was rage in this case.
That usually is indicative of personal, that they know each other, and it's almost to the point of overkill.
Who was this woman who had been so savagely murdered? Investigators looked to the victim's car for answers.
The vehicle itself appeared to be parked in a reasonable manner alongside the road.
Her car keys were by her body, so she probably had them when she got out of her car and then dropped them in the fight.
The keys indicated that she willingly got out of the vehicle and talked to someone, and then the homicide occurred. The stabbing continued not only in the roadway, but on the grass at 2 different locations, and then it looked like it may have occurred alongside the vehicle.
There's blood spatter and cast off on her wheel, on her hood, on her fender, and up on her windshield.
Her purse was in the vehicle. There was $200 in her purse.
This was not a robbery. This was something else.
After finding a driver's license, police determined the victim is 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski.
Out on the road, there was tire acceleration marks leading away from the pool of blood in the roadway, as if you put your foot on the accelerator and peeled out, confirming to us that there was another vehicle in front of her where she was more than likely stabbed.
Police comb the crime scene, but no murder weapon is found. As detectives try to make sense of what happened to Teresa, her lifelong best friend Michelle gets a call.
Terry's brother called, and it was early. Not that it was out of the ordinary, because we were all so close. And so I answered, and he's like, Michelle, Terry never came home last night. Well, I'm going to start calling police departments. And Germantown said, we have her name on file. You'll have to come and speak to a detective.
Michelle and Teresa's brother rushed to the station. They had last seen Teresa the day before when she left for work.
I'll never forget, the officer was in front of me. And I said, where is she? And he said, I'm sorry, she's gone. And I just remember screaming, someone just told me my friend is gone. What does gone mean?
Born in Germantown, Wisconsin, Teresa Wesolowski grew up an outgoing girl with a magnetic personality.
Everyone was friends with Terry. We became best friends in 6th grade, and from that moment on, we were inseparable. We were sisters. There were not many people that called her Teresa. She was always Terry. I think the only time that I remember her being called Teresa was when her mom was mad, when we had done something wrong. It was always just her and I on the playground. I mean, we were just always, I want to say, running the neighborhood, you know? I can't remember a weekend that I wasn't at her house.
As she got older, Teresa was fiercely independent, buying a car at 16 and moving out on her own at 18.
She was working at Cousins Subs in Mequon, and she would go there at 7 a.m., and she would get done by 1, and she would head over to Stone Container, and she would work till 11 o'clock at night.
Despite a heavy work schedule, Teresa loved to be social.
Oh, Terry was fun. You know, Terry liked attention, and she definitely liked the attention from men. Men just seemed more attracted to her. She was young, she was beautiful. Any guy would have wanted that.
How, then, did someone so driven and well-liked meet such a horrible fate?
Young female, you know, at the beginning of her life, getting things together, and it's ended.
Back at the station, investigators reach out to Teresa's family and friends to piece together the hours leading up to her death.
Her shift ended at 11, and the last that anybody saw of her that we know of was that she got into her vehicle and left that parking lot.
During the interviews, detectives get their first tip.
That morning, the officers received a contact from somebody at the Department of Public Works. They had a channel on the same radio system that the police department was on, so they would know that the homicide occurred. They indicated that somebody driving a truck pulled into the parking lot. An individual got out, and they said that he was covered in blood and had blood in his hair.
Is this man somehow connected to the crime scene? Detectives head over to interview the witnesses, who tell police they'd never seen the man before.
We were told the truck driver asked if there was a hospital nearby, and then he indicated now he'd just clean up in the bathroom, which he did, and then left.
It's very common that the person who's doing the attacking gets stabbed too or cuts himself, especially if there's a struggle. Now we had a suspect, a viable suspect, and now we needed to find that person to figure out what happened.
Coming up, detectives uncover suspects with violent tendencies.
He said he can cut people like paper. He could become abusive and violent.
And untangle a web of deception.
Well, he was never married. He didn't have any kids.
He said, I don't want to be a snitch.
Leading them to a suspect they never imagined. We
really felt that we had turned the corner on this case.
It was almost surreal. It got me because it wasn't anyone I knew.
Hours after finding Teresa Wesolowski stabbed to death at the side of the road, police search for a man seen covered in blood at a nearby public works building.
We had a very good police artist. He did a sketch of the individual based on the statements from the witnesses, put the word out there into the community.
While police wait for leads on the bloody man, they shift their attention to Teresa's home to look for clues.
I went down to Teresa's house. We made a search of the residence. I checked the shoes in the residence against the footwear impression at the crime scene, and none of them matched. So the footwear impression at the scene weren't Teresa's.
Investigators talked to Teresa's family and friends, hoping to learn more about her. They learned she was dating someone named Charlie.
Charlie was a young man who didn't hold down a lot of jobs very well. He was staying at his parents' house. They had been dating for a few months prior to her homicide.
We had known Charlie since grade school. We grew up with Charlie. He was 3 years older than us.
We had some people that we interviewed that said they fought a lot or she wanted to break up with him.
I didn't think Charlie was good for anyone. In Terry's mind, he was temporary.
A couple of weeks before her homicide, we found out that he borrowed her car while she was at work and failed to pick her up. She walked to the tavern, and then they got in a bit of an argument, and she finally said enough is enough.
Friends worried how Charlie might react to Teresa moving on.
Some of the people indicated that Teresa told them this boyfriend was jealous and said that if he caught her going out with somebody else, he'd kill her.
He said, give me 2 weeks and you won't have your friend anymore. You're like, what do you mean I won't have my friend?
So that it raises a flag that we have to determine if it got worse after that, or was it just a one evening spat.
You know, stabbing is very personal. That usually is indicative that they know each other.
Why did someone do this? What did she do that was so bad that someone had to stab her repeatedly in this crime of passion?
Police immediately bring Charlie in for questioning.
Charlie was very nervous and seemed to act like he didn't really want to be there.
When police ask Charlie where he was the night of the murder, he says he was home.
He lived in the basement of his parents' house, and he was alibied by his mother. I remember the mother claiming there's no way he could get out of this house without me hearing it.
However, he slept in the basement, which the patio door opens up from the basement outside, so he could leave the house without his parents knowing. At times, Teresa got off of work at 11 at night, and she's found in the morning at 5 or 6 o'clock. So his alibi has weaknesses. It's not airtight.
Could Charlie have snuck out, driven to see Teresa, and murdered her?
Did Charlie have access to a car? He borrowed cars from people a lot. So could he have had a car that night? Yeah, he could have. The homicide's probably less than 5 miles from his house.
Police look to the tire track evidence.
The tire tracks at the scene were measured and documented. I made contact with the Michigan State Police, who have a database of vehicles. They came back with a list of vehicles based on manufacturer specifications that could have created that. And it's quite a large list.
While detectives continue to investigate Charlie, they also turn to the box factory where Teresa worked.
Whenever you have a homicide like this and it's right down the road from where she worked, obviously your biggest pool of suspects has to be the guys she worked with. There was a fair number of men that were interested in her, and there were some that, had dated her. There were some that wanted to date her.
It wasn't like she was going out and dating them. She just liked hanging out with them.
So we went to the factory to determine who had contact with Teresa, and is there anything that stands out and points to any particular individual as possibly having done this.
We interviewed one of her co-workers named Mark Lebecki. Mark Lebecki worked the same shift as Teresa.
Mark was known as a soft-spoken but well-liked guy at the factory.
He's a very quiet individual, very reserved. Most people would describe him as very mellow.
Working just a few machines away from each other, Mark and Teresa had become close.
He talked to her at work. He was a nice, likable person.
And it got to the point where they developed kind of a friendship.
Unlike the men at the factory who wanted to date Teresa, Mark preferred sharing stories about his family.
Mark Lebecki told Teresa that he had a couple kids and he kept photos of them in his wallet. He would show them to Teresa, saying, "These are my kids."
He talked to her enough to create a relationship that she felt the need to go and talk to him when he needed a friend.
Mark tells police he is saddened by Teresa's death. He also remembers something was off with her the night she died.
He indicated that he saw her that night of the homicide and commented that it looked like she was having a bad day, and she said, yeah, something was jamming in her machine.
She just laughed it off and moved on.
Having no reason to question Mark further, police turned to coworkers with a less amicable relationship with Teresa.
There were some statements from individuals that they observed her having an argument with somebody. by the vehicle before the night of the homicide.
The man Teresa was arguing with is identified as her coworker, Isaac Alvarez. When police dig into his background, they find some troubling details.
Isaac Alvarez was just a little bit weird, and he always carried a knife.
At one point, he was upset with a coworker, and he said, "I'm going to cut that cracker, or I'm going to knife that bitch." He told somebody else that, he can cut people like paper.
His comments about cutting up a supervisor, those are the comments that we heard, and those are the comments that kept our interest in him.
To find out more, police look into Isaac's personal life.
His ex-wife indicated that he did have a knife he always kept on his belt, and she indicated that he could become abusive and violent after one drink.
Police bring in Isaac to shed light on his relationship with Teresa and why they were arguing at work.
And in talking to him about Teresa, you could see the emotion coming out of him. This was very stressful for him. That's also the type of stressor that might cause somebody to commit a homicide.
Then, Isaac reveals something else.
He did ask Teresa if she wanted to meet him for a drink, and Teresa, being who Teresa was, she didn't say, "No way." She said, "Well, we'll see." He shows up and she's not there. Is that rejection?
Had Teresa's rejection sent Isaac into a murderous rage?
We asked Isaac to take a polygraph. Because of Isaac's strange behaviors, outbursts, maybe prone to violence, and always carrying a knife, and he was seen in the parking lot area that night, he was on our main suspect list.
While investigating the stabbing death of Teresa Wesolowski, police focus on her coworkers.
She's working in a factory populated by mostly men. That sets up a scenario where you're going to have people trying to ask her out. She was outgoing and she was friendly, so people could perceive that as being led on, where in fact she was probably just being nice.
She always tried to let him down easy. She would always be like, "Well, I don't want to hurt his feelings." She just wanted to make sure that they still wanted to be her friend.
At the police station, investigators interview one of those workers, Isaac Alvarez. Witnesses saw Isaac argue with Teresa before the night of her death.
Isaac's alibi, when he was interviewed, he was home. He lives with a 50-plus-year-old lady. His story was he went to bed at 9 o'clock, and he may have had a conversation with her when she came home, but he doesn't recall. She says she had a conversation with him 11:15, 11:30 at night, and she thought it was around 1 o'clock when he went to bed. It's a little different than his story. Well, in his case, is that person willing to lie for you? We don't know. So that's not an airtight alibi.
Police convince Isaac to take a polygraph.
He was somewhat deceptive and not answering the questions in the proper manner. And so we believe that he was trying to skew the results of the polygraph.
You couldn't get a good answer from him.
So because of that, it was ruled inconclusive.
Without any hard evidence, police can't charge Isaac for the crime. While detectives look for more leads, Teresa's autopsy report arrives.
Based on the injury patterns, the attack was a surprise attack because we did not see a significant amount of defensive type injuries. And then she was pinned in a prone or face down position. I individually identified and labeled 47 separate stab wounds. This would have been a horrifying death for any individual.
As police review evidence, they follow up on the lead on the bloody man from the Department of Public Works.
They had a sketch made of this unknown person that stopped at the garage to wash up.
We put it out there. The individual didn't come forward. It was out in the press. It was in the newspaper. I did go back and re-interview the witnesses, but nothing came back of evidentiary value.
Police also continue interviewing Teresa's friends.
I always protected Terry. So when she was killed, I had no purpose anymore. And so I gave my all to whatever they needed. It was hours and hours and hours of interviews with the police, trying to give them everything that I knew about every person we had ever hung out with, for me to help them to hopefully find who did this.
One of the people detectives learn about is Jerry Kirkpatrick.
So Jerry Kirkpatrick was a delivery guy to Cousins where Teresa worked.
Friends say Jerry asked Teresa out numerous times.
I don't think she was looking to have a relationship with him. He was definitely interested in her.
That's the indication that we got, that he was pursuing her more than she was pursuing him.
Police learn about one encounter with Jerry that left Teresa unsettled.
I thought I saw Jerry before she died at the club, just watching us. And it gave me this feeling like, why is he here? Like, he shouldn't know we're here. Why is he standing off in the shadows? It was a very creepy feeling.
So the question is Jerry stalking her?
But then, Teresa's friends point out something else disturbing about Jerry.
They thought he might be similar to the picture of the person that was at the Department of Public Works. The drawing looked like him.
Officers immediately interview Jerry at his home. Jerry denies he is the man in the sketch. He claims he was at a bar with his stepbrother the night of Teresa's murder, then went home before midnight.
There was alibi information that was confirming of the statement. When he got home, he called for a pizza to be delivered, and that was confirmed subsequently with phone records. He let us look at his vehicle. We examined the interior or exterior. Nothing of evidentiary value was located in that examination.
Then, investigators make a startling discovery.
There were knives found at Jerry Kirkpatrick's residence.
A lot of times we'd ask people, do you have knives? And can we see those knives? Do you mind if we have them tested? A lot of times that's done for a reaction. So he presents 4 or 5 knives. He did let us look at them when we were at the house. We even submitted them to the crime lab to have it analyzed.
While investigators wait for results, Jerry's landlord delivers some alarming news.
What happens within the next few days is he talks to his landlord about breaking his lease.
Jerry Kirkpatrick decided to move out of town, and that's in the midst of being interviewed and the investigation. So right away, that raises our suspicion.
Was Jerry trying to give detectives the slip?
It is clearly a red flag, and we have to look at that behavior as being possibly flight behavior. So we want to find out why.
While investigating Jerry Kirkpatrick for the brutal stabbing of 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski, detectives learn from Jerry's landlord he's about to skip town.
The landlord knew the police were talking to Jerry. We were actually notified by the Milwaukee Police Department because the landlord had thought, hey, this is odd, and called them. He says he's going to move to Tennessee. One of the aspects you look at in a homicide, is there any flight behavior after the homicide? Well, breaking your lease and moving to Tennessee might be described as flight behavior. We did confirm that he put money on a place on that Friday after the homicide.
But when investigators get the lab results back on Jerry's knives, the case takes a frustrating turn.
Nothing came back of evidentiary value.
Somebody having a collection of knives is not that uncommon, especially in Wisconsin. And the quick move that he made is something strange, but, there's nothing we can do about it. If he wants to move, he can move.
Police have one more lead to follow: Jerry's resemblance to the bloody man at the Public Works building.
He fit that description. We actually did an in-person lineup with Jerry, and he was not picked out by the individuals that observed this person driving the truck.
That person was never identified and never located.
Without any hard evidence linking Jerry to the murder, Police have to let him go. Weeks go by, and investigators worry the case will grow cold.
We're doing interviews. Some people we're re-interviewing. But as time moves on, the investigation is getting older and older and harder to solve.
As the weeks turn into months, investigators doggedly work the case.
Well, I technically could have retired about 5 years before I did. A lot of it is to bring justice for the victim, but also to bring some sort of resolution or closure for the family.
The police kept telling me that it was someone close to her because of the horrific nature of it. I alienated myself from people because I just didn't know who I could or couldn't trust.
Months turn into years, but Teresa's loved ones make sure she's not forgotten.
Once a year on the date of the murder, the families would come out and hold vigils. It was a way for the family to try to say that we're still fighting to resolve this case.
But we use it as a way of seeing who is showing up and maybe more importantly, who isn't showing up.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary until 2005, 6 years after the murder, when Teresa's family notices something unusual.
Her mom had called me and said, "Did you happen to go out and leave flowers for Terry?" And I said, "No, I didn't."
These arrangements showed up and they checked around and didn't know who put them there. So that always leads you to believe, is there somebody out there that's feeling guilty about committing a homicide and leaving something on a gravesite?
We had a camera installed to see if maybe we could identify the next time somebody did something like that. But we didn't capture any image or anything.
For detectives, it's another dead end. But then, with the investigation on the brink of going cold, a new forensic technology turns this 6-year-old case red hot.
In 2005, I got a contact from the Wisconsin Crime Lab, and Patty said, "Hey, I want you to submit this list of items for us to analyze using a technique called YSTR DNA testing."
With YSTR DNA testing, it allows us to find a very small amount of Y chromosome male DNA and a very large amount of DNA from a female source. So it's like finding that single grain of salt in a large bag of sugar.
Early on, when we had the blood evidence on Teresa's hands tested, it all came back as her DNA. That's a problem because it's not giving us a lead. What happens if we strip away all the X chromosomes? If she's a female and that's all her blood, there should be nothing left.
The analyst retests the swabs of Teresa's hands for male DNA.
The first thing I did was look at the previously run DNA samples to see if there was any Y chromosome DNA present in those. All of a sudden, all the DNA types I developed on her hands are matching a known standard for male DNA. And it was incredible. I contacted Detective Yogers for samples of DNA from individuals known to be connected to the case.
And now we're going to go take DNA samples from all of our suspects. We took what was probably our 25 top suspects, nearest and dearest, ex-boyfriend, boyfriend, that type of thing. That first group was a 0.
Undeterred, investigators submit more samples.
We went back to the list and got a second group.
We were testing people that were ancillary people. We had DNA from officers at the crime scene that we used to eliminate.
I didn't think we were going to get an answer for this case.
Then, after over 40 samples, a breakthrough.
The testing came back and only one person matched the Y chromosome found mixed into the blood on Teresa's hand.
Detective Yogers called me and said, "You're not going to believe this. The last guy that I swabbed is the guy that has a positive match on that DNA."
After 7 years investigating the murder of Teresa Wesolowski, detectives have now matched DNA from the scene to one of their suspects.
I was beyond excited. I actually shouted, "Oh my God," at my desk. We had a match from the DNA on Teresa's hands to Mark Lebecki.
Right away, I'm like, who's that guy?
Mark Lebecki is a co-worker of Teresa's. Mark Lebecki was one of the individuals that was interviewed by the officers. His statement was that he and Teresa were friendly at the factory.
So the murder occurs, and Mark Lebecki kept working there and was still working there.
Before they approach Mark, detectives need more than just the DNA evidence.
Now, the other heavy lifting starts because even the DNA evidence isn't going to stand on its own. So we need to bring all these other factors into play in building a case that's sufficient for the DA to charge.
First, detectives go back to the factory to dig deeper into Mark's background.
Some people said, "Oh, no, Mark Lebecki, he wouldn't kill anybody. He's just a puppy." He would show people pictures of little girls, and he said they were his daughters. What do you think I should get them for Christmas or birthday, whatever?
When detectives look closer, they discover Mark isn't all he claims to be.
Well, he was never married. He didn't have any kids. So this is just like weird. He had this like pretend life.
Mark Lebecki was pretty much a loner, lived with his parents in a mobile home in a rural area, apparently liked to watch television, play video games.
I think it was just a big fantasy with him, a big game to try to fit in.
What else had Mark been hiding?
We had one person that said that Mark had asked her what she thought he could do to better his chances with going out with Teresa. So he clearly had a focus on her.
Detectives revisit evidence from the crime scene, starting with the bloody boot prints.
The problem with identifying somebody with a common shoe is there's so many of them. There could be millions of those shoes made. I contact a person in Scottsdale, Arizona, the detective in their forensic unit, and he had the foremost outsold databases that existed. And he said, that is a Texas steer outsole. Early in the investigation, we had information about the employees being supplied shoes or they could purchase shoes from the store.
When police search factory records, they make a crucial discovery.
And we determined that Mark Lebecki had submitted a receipt for a Texas steer shoe.
Next, investigators turn to the tire tracks left at the scene.
So we took 56 people out of our investigation and identified the vehicles that were registered to them at the time of the homicide. 5 individuals had vehicles that were able to make that mark at the scene. One of them was Mark Lebecki.
With the evidence piling up, detectives ask Mark to come down to the police department for an interview.
He was quiet. He answered the questions. He was confident, I would say.
That confidence doesn't last long.
When he finds out that his DNA is on her hands, he then starts to try and explain why they are there. What started out as I just talked to her at the door is I didn't talk to her then, I talked to her at a break, and we may have hugged.
Detectives confront Mark with the evidence.
I told him the car, wheel track matches. Your DNA is found on her hands, and a boot that you wear is in the blood footwear impression on the road. So, we're looking at you. You need to start explaining some of this stuff.
Now, it's Mark's turn to drop a bombshell on police.
He said, I don't want to get anyone else in trouble. I don't want to be a snitch. Then he mentioned this guy named Tom Thompson.
Tom Thompson worked at the factory with Mark and Teresa.
At the time of the homicide, the officers that went up and did the canvass at the factory did speak with Tom Thompson. His statement to them was that he knew Teresa. He wasn't necessarily friends with Teresa. They never dated, anything like that.
Mark tells them what happened the night of the murder.
Mark said he stopped on the side of the road to buy some cocaine from Thompson.
He said that when he got up there was a vehicle already parked in front where he parked. and Tom Thompson walked up to his vehicle.
So Thompson goes in, sits in the back seat. Mark said, I am doing the cocaine in the front of the seat.
According to him, Teresa gets in the back seat and gets in an argument with Tom, and he proceeds to stab her. Mark says he only hears thumping and movement in the back seat.
Now it's time to start poking holes in the story. She cannot be stabbed 40-some times in the back seat of someone's car and they not know what's going on. The whole interior would have been covered in blood. So that's out right there.
Mark says Teresa flops out of there onto the ground. Tom Thompson continues to stab her and drags her to that location alongside the vehicle.
According to Mark, Thompson then turned on him.
Tom Thompson tell him, you keep your mouth shut, and then he let him go. So he kept his mouth shut. He didn't go to the police.
4 years later, Tom Thompson dies, but Mark keeps silent for another 3 years.
He's trying to explain how he's involved in this homicide, and the easiest thing to do is to blame it on the dead guy.
Detectives re-interview workers at the factory about Tom Thompson.
Everybody to a person said he was a health nut.
We have found no indication that he was dealing cocaine or using cocaine.
Investigators asked Teresa's friends if she used drugs.
Terry wanted nothing to do with cocaine. Nothing.
So she wouldn't have gone there to buy drugs from Tom Thompson. What was her reason for being there?
There's one last piece of evidence to examine. The car that Mark drove at the time of the murder.
We wanted that vehicle. We found it by another owner, and we ended up buying it from that guy. We brought it down to the lab and examined it for blood, hair, whatever evidence that we could. That rear seat was taken apart. It was a perforated leather, so there were holes in it. So the blood went down through the holes in that leather, and then they soaked into the foam rubber of that seat.
Does the blood belong to Teresa? It's sent to the lab for analysis.
I was very excited to call Mike Yogers and let him know I had found a possible match.
Ten years after 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski is stabbed to death, detectives are waiting to see if blood found in the back of coworker Mark Lebecki's car belongs to her.
Those DNA profiles matched the DNA profile from Teresa Wesolowski.
Oh, it was significant. It was an important moment.
But what about Mark's claim that coworker Tom Thompson killed Teresa?
At this stage, and 7 years after the murder, Lebecki is implicating a man who had died 3 years earlier, but it was only Lebecki's DNA that was ever found on Teresa's body. They find blood in a cushion of a seat in Lebecki's car. They find that that's Teresa's DNA. They have his DNA, her DNA, and at that point, the case was made.
That was the final thing that district attorney needed to issue the charge. We really felt that we had turned the corner on this case.
Detective Yogers called me and he said, I just want to let you know that we are going to make an arrest. And I was so excited. I was waiting, just waiting for the news.
Detectives go to the box factory where Mark works.
We watched for him to come out of the building, and Kim and I walked up to him and told him he was under arrest. I was excited. It was a good day.
Mark denies killing Teresa, so investigators are left to piece together what really happened that night.
I think Mark Lebecki was a very lonely person that probably imagined a relationship with Teresa and decided she was the one. She was just being nice to people. And he probably read that for more than it was.
I think for Terry, it was more that this guy was telling him his problems at work, and she was a listener. She would listen. He wore on her heartstrings and her niceness as a person.
Then, on May 28th, 1999, Mark made his move.
I think that she was coming out of the building, and Mark for whatever reason, convinced her to meet him. They meet at the back of the vehicle.
I think that he probably did ask her to come back to his place for the night. And when she said no, he just went on a rampage and just started stabbing her. He stabbed her multiple times on that road. Then he dragged her over to that grass. He stabbed her some more. There's blood flying up on her car. He was a monster that night.
We can only guess at it because he's not talking. We don't have to prove why he did this. We just have to prove that he did.
After the vicious stabbing, Mark returned to his normal routine.
Mark Lebecki continues to work at the factory. He doesn't make any erratic move like moving away or changing jobs. He just sort of carries on with life as he did before the murder. He had no criminal record. Mark Lebecki certainly did not emerge as a likely suspect at all. It was shocking to hear that Mark Lebecki had killed Teresa.
It was almost surreal. It got me because it wasn't anyone I knew.
At trial, Mark Lebecki enters a plea of not guilty and sticks to his story that Tom Thompson killed Teresa.
Clearly, his incentive was to try and show somebody else did it back there. But that doesn't hold up.
I don't think the jury bought that at all.
Mark is convicted of first-degree murder, and in November 2010, he is sentenced to 30 years in prison with no chance of parole.
Mark Lebecki did not admit guilt. The judge noted that Lebecki never expressed any remorse.
In his mind, he's still not guilty. And the judge even said to him, I hope that someday you will admit to yourself that you've done this, because you have done this.
The journey was long and tedious. It will never replace Teresa for the family. She was a good kid. She was moving forward with her life. She probably would have maybe had grandkids. All those things are lost because of Mark.
I have pictures up of us. We had always said we would grow old together and raise our children together. My kids always ask, Mom, why was your friend murdered? I don't know. Is she in heaven? Yeah, I think she is.
A cherished family at the center of a small town.
They laughed and they joked around and they were happy together. They were loved and well respected in our community.
Is gunned down in cold blood.
I'll never forget walking in the house that morning and seeing what I saw. Who could have done this? Was it somebody that they knew? Maybe this person had sought some type of revenge.
Detectives pursue a trail of suspects.
He was actually set to gain from the death.
And then his behavior was alarming.
During the polygraph, he started carrying the stuff off. I know they had had issues within their relationship.
They said, well, I can take care of that problem for the right sum of money.
But the killer remains elusive.
What are we missing? What are we not doing?
Until a shocking confession reveals the true culprit.
Then she agreed to wear a recording device and elicit some more information. I mean, it was just incredible. It was disturbing.
The killer was about the most unexpected thing. It was such a shock.
Columbia, Kentucky is a small but tight-knit rural community.
Everyone knows everyone else. Your neighbors feel like family. People watch out for one another.
Not uncommon. You'll be walking downtown, you'll stop, run into friends or family. Very friendly atmosphere.
One of the most beloved families in Columbia are the Wellnitzes. They own a veterinary clinic just steps away from their home.
I just remember that environment at the clinic was a place that I, as a kid, wanted to spend every spare moment that I had, just because it was a great place to be. Joe and Beth, their kids, Dennis and Meg, they were kind, They were loving and they were fun to be around.
On February 26, 1993, the town forever changes after two of Joe and Beth's employees make a grim discovery just after 8 a.m. at the Wellnitz home.
Two employees had shown up for work, but Joe and Beth were not at the clinic. The clinic was adjacent to the residence. So the gentleman walked over to the house, went in the back door, and discovered Joe's body in the downstairs area of the home. The lady that had also shown up for work that morning, she then went to the house, discovered two bodies upstairs.
Joe and Beth and their son, Dennis, they've been shot. Then she ran out and called the police.
Investigators rushed to the scene.
I'll never forget walking in the house that morning and seeing what I saw. It was just total shock. I knew what kind of people they were. I knew how kind they were and how compassionate they were with their work that they did. I couldn't believe it. When we entered the house, there was Joe laying on the floor. He was on his stomach. His hand was underneath his chest.
He had a pair of gray sweatpants on and a white T-shirt. It looked like he came out of a bathroom and had been shot and fell face first. Blood that had pooled around the body.
My initial reaction was shock. But then I realized shortly thereafter that I had a job to do, and my job was to take care of the scene to see if we could find out who did this horrible thing. Around the scene where Joe was found, there was multiple shell casings, and you could see bullet holes in the walls. We went from there to the upstairs, and we found Dennis's body laying there in his bedroom. He had no shirt on. You could see bullet holes in his back. There was also shell casings laying around. Looked like he was crawling on the floor and was executed by the killer at that point. Entering into the back bedroom that belonged to Joe and Beth, you could see multiple shell casings back there.
Beth was found on the side of the bed nearest to the doorway. She appeared to have been standing when she was shot, with multiple gunshot wounds to her head and upper torso. The Wellnitzes were all found either in or near a bed or in clothes that suggested they had been sleeping. So it was apparent that it had happened during the night at some point or early morning hours.
After examining the bodies, police scour the rest of the house for clues, but there's no sign of a murder weapon.
There were no broken windows, there was no furniture turned over, the house had not been ransacked. It was significant that there was no forced entry, that at least gave the impression that it was somebody with some degree of familiarity with the home and with the Wellnitz family. It appeared this family had been targeted.
Who could have done this? Who is the person that would have done such a horrible crime in this community that is usually so gentle? Was it somebody that they knew? Maybe this person had sought some type of revenge. Once we saw that these three people had been murdered, we immediately wanted to know, where is Meg Wellnitz at, so we can find her to make sure she's safe, first of all, make sure she's not a victim. We were able to locate her. She was at school in Lexington and was unharmed.
Officers are tasked with breaking the news to Joe and Beth's daughter.
Meg was told that her mom and dad and brother were murdered, were dead. I really felt sorry for her. I thought, now how is she going to go on? How does she recover from this?
We got a phone call just a little while after I got up, and they said Beth and Joe have been killed. And at that moment, we didn't know Dennis also had been killed. And I just stayed in my room that day and just cried. Just couldn't believe that they were gone. They were like a second set of parents for me.
One of my family members had called. They gave me the horrible news that Joe and Beth and Dennis had all been murdered. And that's a day you don't forget.
Joe Wellnitz was born in 1942 and grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. From a young age, he always loved animals and turned that passion into a career.
Not many rural communities anywhere would have been able to boast of having a veterinarian with the background that Joe had. Joe was one of the most caring, kindest gentlemen that you will ever meet.
In his 30s, Joe met Beth Preston, a woman 10 years his junior. Both divorced, they married in 1979, and Joe adopted her 2 kids, Dennis and Meg. 2 years later, they moved their family and Joe's clinic from Lexington to Columbia.
Meg would come in and out of the clinic. Dennis would mostly, I would just see him outside. He was only 20 years old.
Dennis was popular in school. He'd worked in town. He had attended college. He was just a well-liked young man.
Beth was the one I was closest to. She was the face of the clinic. She was the person everyone saw when they walked in the door. Always had a smile on her face. The relationship between Joe and Beth was perfect to me. They laughed and they joked around and they were happy together. They were a very happy family.
But one horrific night has changed everything. Who could have wanted to kill the Wellnitzes, and why?
The 2 employees that discovered the bodies were certainly interviewed that morning. There was really no motive, and the way the 2 of them arrived that morning, there was really no opportunity for either of them to commit the murders. They were dismissed as suspects.
In Lexington, police asked Meg to help them piece together her family's last movements. She says she visited them for dinner 2 days ago, but had returned that night as she had school.
Meg told the police that she'd been in Lexington the night before the bodies were found, and that she'd been playing cards with some friends, her boyfriend, as well as another couple, Bill Meese, and then Bill Meese's wife.
When asked if Meg was aware of any problems at home, she gives police their first lead.
There was a couple that were tenants of Joe and Bess they may have had issues with, and their names Brenda and Dave Cowell.
The Cowells had been living in a cabin on the Wellnitz property.
They were living there rent-free, exchanged for doing some work for Joe and Beth. There was some discrepancy there about whether they were doing the work sufficiently or not. Joe and Beth felt like they weren't, so they gave them a bill for $1,800 for the rent. And ultimately, they never paid it. They filed bankruptcy.
Were the Cowells angry enough to want the Wellnitzes dead? Was this murder payback?
They were persons of interest, people that we needed to talk to. We needed to prove or disprove whether they were involved in it or not.
Coming up, fear races through the community.
We thought if this could happen to the Wellnitzes, it could happen to any of us. Who would be next? People were scared. Everybody wanted to know who did it, why they did it, and how they did it.
Everybody was just guessing, gossiping.
And police unearthed family secrets, indicating a potential motive.
It was a surprise to me to learn that there was another child involved. There was actually a will giving him so much money out of the estate.
Before a shocking confession,
I walked through the house, I engaged in firearm. I emptied the magazine of weapons.
Reveals a killer no one could have imagined.
It was a bombshell. Couldn't believe it.
Police investigating the homicide of Joe, Beth, and Dennis Wellnitz have their first suspects. Tenants who had recently clashed with the family over money.
When we learned about the bankruptcy, about the them living on the property, this discrepancy about the work they were doing, whether it was sufficient or not, especially when it came to the money, and then this bill for $1,800, we thought, well, this could be a motive for them wanting to do something. We knew that we had to talk to them. We had to see if they were involved.
Police learned the Cowells no longer live on the Wellnitz property.
Maybe they left there disgruntled. We went on that theory. Maybe they had went to the Wellnitz house that morning and then got into it with them, and then that's when all this escalated from there.
While detectives track down the Cowles, officers canvass the area for witnesses.
We did a neighborhood canvass to talk to people to see if anybody in that area had heard anything, seen anything, or had any other information that they could provide. We were not able to identify anybody that did hear anything that went on that night during the shooting or anything.
4 days after the murder, detectives locate the Cowles and bring them in for separate interviews. Brenda claims she didn't hold any grudge against the Wellnitzes.
She told us that even though they had not paid the money that Joe and Beth felt like they owed, they had worked out the discrepancy and everything had moved on from that.
Police asked Brenda where she was the night of the murder.
They ended up moving off the farm. She said she was not there. She was at home when it happened.
When detectives speak with Brenda's husband, Dave, he's unable to confirm her alibi because of his own.
Dave was working in Louisville, Kentucky, which is almost in Indiana, probably 100 miles from where this happened at. He adamantly denied any involvement in this. He didn't want it to do harm to them.
Investigators speak to friends of the Wellnitzes to confirm the dispute with the Cowles had been resolved.
We were talking to friends in that area. We were able to determine that that situation where those hard feelings were had been resolved a long time prior to this happening. They were ruled out as far as having anything to do with this murder.
With no arrests made, fear begins to grip the town.
We thought if this could happen to the Wellnitzes, it could happen to any of us. It could happen to anyone. They were loved and well respected in our community, and so if they could be killed, who would be next? People were scared. Everybody wanted to know who did it, why they did it, and how they did it.
Word travels fast. Everybody was expressing their opinion as to what may or may not have contributed to this. But everybody was just guessing, gossiping.
It's got the whole community in an uproar about what happened. We had to get some answers pretty quickly, make sure that it wasn't some random killing and that other people may be coming next. When we started thinking about who could have done this, we started thinking about the veterinary business. People get very sensitive about their pets, so we thought, well, maybe somebody had gotten disgruntled over that. We learned from the employees there that there was an issue between Jerry Yarberry and the Wellnitzes where he had brought in his dog to have treatment done to its eye, and the dog ultimately was blind. So we thought, well, maybe this might be a motive for somebody to do harm to them. Some of the key questions that we wanted to know from Jerry was, how did he feel now toward the Wellnitzes, and how did he feel toward what had happened between them?
Police bring Jerry into the station for questioning.
He told us that he was very upset about his pet. He refused to pay the bill that was owed to the Wellnitzes. They ended up having to file a lawsuit against him in order to recoup the funds.
While Jerry admits he was angry with Joe, he says he isn't a killer.
He adamantly denied doing anything to the Wellnitzes as far as going to that extreme. When we talked to Jerry, we learned that he was home watching TV with his wife and kids, and we were able to confirm that that's where he was at, and therefore we were able to eliminate him as a suspect in this case.
There's frustration on the part of the police because they want to see a crime solved. They want to see a murderer, in this case, held accountable. They want to see that person punished. And then there's frustration because we don't know if justice is ever going to be served.
As the case threatens to stall, a friend of the Wellnitz family contacts police with pertinent information.
I said, I'm a real estate broker, and our getting the property ready to sell, there was an indenture, kind of a rectangle, in the floor of that master bedroom closet. I knew for a fact Joe and them kept a floor safe upstairs in their bedroom in the closet. I'm assuming, but that's where he kept all these important papers, his deed, anything that was of significance.
Gives you the opinion that the safe was part of the plan all along, that the killer knew where that safe was at. It was not setting out in the open where you would commit these 3 murders and then say, oh, okay, there's a safe, I'm going to take that with me. It was hidden back in a closet.
It certainly caused the officers to focus their attention on who would want that safe, who would know the safe was there, and who would stand to have some benefit from removing the safe, especially in light of the fact that nothing else was taken, nothing else was disturbed.
If we could locate that safe, and very easily, that's going to put us on the trail of whoever committed this crime.
Police investigating the first triple homicide in Columbia, Kentucky, are searching for an object stolen from the scene they hope will lead them to the killer.
The missing fire safe was certainly a critical piece of evidence that the officers were investigating. They tried to determine more specifically what the contents of the safe were, what was in there, what was going to perhaps turn up that might then be a clue.
In talking to the family, we were able to learn that there was possibly could be insurance papers in that safe, maybe even up to around $1,000.
In this case, the only motive was to either cause the death of the Wellens family or to take the safe out.
As detectives put out an APB for the safe, the autopsy results come in.
One of the crucial things that we need to know is the time of death.
As far as the time frame of the death, the internal examination of the bodies was consistent that they had been killed within a few hours prior to the bodies being discovered.
It's estimated Joe, Beth, and Dennis were murdered around 4 a.m.
The medical examiner was able to determine that each victim died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds.
None of the victims had defense marks on their bodies, meaning they had likely been taken by surprise.
Additional projectiles were recovered from the bodies during the autopsy. The firearms examiner did determine that all of the shots were fired from a 9mm handgun. It did seem likely that they were all fired by the same person, given the fact that they were all fired from the same gun.
Obviously, from there, we're going to start doing multiple interviews to try to eliminate or show who has killed these 3 people, who could have that much of a grudge against them. During our investigation, we were able to learn that Joe had another son by the name of Eric. From my previous personal experience with Joe and Beth, I didn't know about Eric until after the murder. Joe had adopted him much the way that he did with Meg and Dennis, and then that marriage broke apart. It was a surprise to me to learn that there was another child involved that Joe had adopted at a young age. We started receiving information, documentation showing that Eric was actually still set to gain from the death of Joe. There was actually a will giving him so much money out of the estate to the tune of $250,000. Eric was somebody that we needed to talk to because that much money obviously would be a motive for somebody to do something like this.
Police tracked the 19-year-old down at his home in Lexington.
When Eric was interviewed, he was shocked that it occurred. They had issues within their relationship, him and Joe. It was a very distant relationship and then non-existent after a while. Eric also indicated that he felt like he was replaced by Dennis. They had completely become estranged after so long and had stopped any contact with each other. One of the things that we learned was that Eric did resent Joe. Part of that resentment was because of this estrangement.
Had Eric settled a score and inherited a fortune by killing the family? When police question him about the will, they are taken aback by his response.
When he learned that he was a beneficiary to this will, he was actually surprised that he was included in it, because they've been estranged for that many years.
But detectives can't just take Eric at his word.
The motive is there, the possibility, so we needed to know whether he had any type of alibi that we could substantiate to make sure that he wasn't in Columbia that morning. We learned during our interview with Eric Wellness that he had worked that night, and then once he got off work, he went to a friend's house and slept at that friend's house.
Eric says he was in Lexington the entire night, 2 hours away from Columbia.
So we were able to talk to that friend and determine that he did not have the opportunity to commit this crime. We felt pretty certain that he was not a suspect at this point. We eliminated him and moved on.
I was shocked, and it was an odd situation being questioned by the police officers. The fact that I was named in the will, if that was something that I had known, then that for sure gives me a motive. But there's no way in the world I could have ever done anything like that. Yes, I was angry as a child, you know, having your dad disappearing out of your life, you know, kind of in a snap of a finger. It was hard, and I was angry, but not that kind of anger where I wished anything bad.
Detectives learn that Meg, the only other surviving member of the family, is also named in the will. Could she have anything to do with the murder?
I really felt bad for Meg at that time because I knew Meg, but we had to get some answers. When we approached her about the will, she didn't know about it. She also wanted answers, you know. She loved them, Joe and Beth and Dennis.
She was so bright and intelligent and loving.
Police ask Meg about her relationship with her parents. She says it was good, but she raises one concern.
Officers did learn that Beth and Meg had some disagreements over some of the people that she was now spending a lot of time with.
One person in particular, Meg's boyfriend, Randy Appleton.
Beth and Joe didn't want him around, so we needed to talk to Randy. Randy became a viable person of interest.
After 3 members of the Wellnitz family are gunned down in their own home, police now have a new suspect, the boyfriend of surviving daughter Meg, 20-year-old Randy Appleton.
Joe didn't go into any details, but he had a concern, I think, of the direction that Meg had taken as far as who she was associating with.
That could be a motive for Randy Appleton.
Detectives asked Randy where he was the night of the murder.
He was leery about talking to us.
Randy tells police he was playing cards with Meg and her friends until 2 a.m. the night of the murder. Then he mentions something that grabs detectives' attention.
We learned that he was interested in firearms. We had learned that he had frequented a firing range.
If the murder weapon had been used at the same firing range where he in fact acknowledged having been practicing with a 9mm, would be a very critical part of the investigation if those shell casings collected from the range matched the murder weapon that was believed to have been used to kill the Wellnitz family.
We're starting to see red flags at this point. Randy was one that liked guns. He did like to go to that firing range and did use a weapon there. We actually ended up going to the firing range and collecting several spent shell casings. All of them were submitted to the crime lab. Our hope was that we could match those rounds through the laboratory to some of the 9mm shell casings that we had located.
2 weeks later, police received the results on the shell casings.
They were not able to find any casings that matched as having been fired from the murder weapon that was used to kill the Wellnitz family.
It was very disappointing that we were unable to tie any of those shell casings to Randy Appleton.
It suggested either that they used a different weapon at the firing range than was used to murder the family, or that it could have been somebody else.
Despite the setback, Randy's love of guns and familiarity with the Wellnitz home means he is still a suspect. Police look to confirm his alibi with those he and Meg claim to have been with the night of the murder, Bill and Regina Meese.
We had to talk to them to see if that was what they were doing, playing cards during the early morning hours, because that was Randy's alibi. Bill was cooperative, where Bill had agreed to talk to us about certain things.
Bill corroborates Randy's alibi.
They were all four together playing cards till the early morning hours. He agreed to take a lie detector test. During the process of the polygraph examiner asked him if he knew anything about what happened, if he had any involvement about what happened.
And then his behavior was something that was alarming. It was something that caused some concern with the officers.
He started tearing the stuff off that you put on during a polygraph and just shut it down right then. And then the polygraph was over at that point. So he did not complete the polygraph. He was just very mad. Definitely raised red flags with us that he knows more than he's telling us, and that he's afraid of that polygraph because that polygraph might tell us more than he wants us to know.
Despite his behavior, police have nothing concrete on Bill and are forced to let him go.
We tried to talk to Regina, but Bill did not want us to interview her. He would get very controlling with her. It's over at this point. We were still running down leads. Obviously, you always get leads that you're going to follow. But one of the things that I thought early on was, if we ever get to a point where Regina and Bill are not talking, we need to go back and reapproach her.
Lacking any new developments, months turn into years, leaving detectives and the Wellnitz's loved ones frustrated.
What are we missing? What are we not doing? They're friends of mine, and this was one of those cases that you want to solve before your career's over. It was just like you were at a dead end, and we couldn't figure that out,
When the case went cold, it was very disheartening just knowing that someone had committed this terrible crime and that they may possibly never have to pay for that. I just remember feeling so sad. Beth and Joe were just such a light in our community.
You don't have any answers when it happened. Had no idea of who could have done it or why they would have done it. There was so little information coming out, it just kind of fell to the wayside. It's just sad.
The case remains cold for nearly a decade. But in 2002, detectives decide to take a fresh look at the triple homicide.
This case is still on my mind. I had never forgot it. And I said, okay, what's the condition or what's the status of Bill and Regina? And I learned at that point that they were separated. That was the thing that we were waiting on before, is when this separation occurred, to go see what Regina had to say outside of the control of Bill Meese.
Police track Regina down, and what she has to tell them is shocking.
When we met with Regina in Lexington, she told us that she had proof of who killed the Wellnitzes.
Nine years after the murder of Joe and Beth Wellnitz and their son Dennis, police finally have a break in the case. One of their surviving daughter Meg's best friends, Regina Meese, says she knows who the killer is and has proof.
When we approached her, she immediately said, I've got this piece of evidence. She essentially wanted some assurance that she wouldn't be charged with tampering with evidence. And I assured her that if she in fact turned it over to law enforcement, I didn't think it would even constitute a crime. At that time, we didn't know if she had photographs that perhaps were taken during the commission of the crime. We didn't know if she may have had the firearm that was used in the commission of the crime, or what piece of evidence that she had. But she shared with us that she had in fact retained possession of the fire safe that had been removed from the back closet in the bedroom upstairs of Beth and Joe's home.
When police ask Regina how she got the safe, she says the person who gave it to her is the one who shot the Wellnitzes.
Regina's the one started the ball rolling. Everything started to fall in place. Regina told us that Bill Meese was the one responsible for the death of Dennis and the death of Joe and Beth Wellnitz. It's very shocking, very shocking.
She had been interviewed by the police before, but had been told by her then husband, now ex-husband, not to talk to the police, not to tell them anything. And it certainly appeared, at least, to be a burden lifted that she was able to share this information.
It was a huge deal when we heard what she had to say. That was the part that we needed to happen, and that from there on, it steamrolled from there.
Regina takes police to her home to see the fire safe.
It was the same type and everything that we were missing from the house that night. It was the same measurements, that same dimensions that we had measured when we were in the Wellness house and discovered that the safe was missing.
When we later compared the bottom impressions on that fire safe to the imprints taken from the closet, it was a perfect match, and in fact it was the fire safe that was stolen from the Wellness home.
Nothing of significant value is found in the safe, but Regina delivers another explosive revelation to police. She tells them that Bill is planning to kill again.
Interviewing Bill Meese's ex-wife, it came to the attention of the police that a mutual friend had had an encounter with Bill Meese where he had offered to kill her boyfriend.
Bill had told her that he would commit this murder for her for $500.
I mean, it was just incredible. It was disturbing.
Was Bill some kind of twisted serial murderer? Police decide to move before he can strike once more.
We initiated this investigation and contacted that lady that Bill had approached.
She agreed to wear a recording device, speak with Bill Meese. He was provided a certain sum of money as a down payment, and the police then arrested him for offering to kill this mutual friend's boyfriend.
With Bill in jail, police question him about the Wellnitz triple homicide.
There was no statements made about the Wellnitz murder that he was willing to make at that time.
When we interviewed him there, I mean, we did not get a confession from him. He denied it at that point. Even though we knew that we were on the right track, it still takes evidence to put this together.
As detectives work on building their case with Bill still in custody, news spreads quickly about his arrest and possible involvement in the shooting of Joe, Beth, and Dennis.
When I first heard about Bill being a suspect, it sent shivers up my spine because I immediately am flooded with the memories of being in junior high with Bill and having very, very strange interactions with him. I was 13, 14 years old. He at one point stabbed me in the leg with a pencil. He had been open about talking about murder and proceeded to threaten me that if I said anything about it, that he'd kill me and my family. I hadn't seen my dad in years when I went to school with Bill. I don't know how they knew each other.
One question remains for police. If Bill murdered the Wellnitzes, what was his motive? Detectives learn another piece of shocking information when Regina tells them Bill might have pulled the trigger, but someone else masterminded the killings.
She did share with us that Meg had been involved in the planning of this murder and that she had wanted it done. Certainly that was shocking to everybody. She said that Meg had ridden with Bill Meese from Lexington down to Columbia late night, early morning when these murders occurred.
Meg was a big part of the planning and execution of the plan at her parents' house. What we also learned is that they had been planning this 3 months prior to the murders before they did it. We believed at this time that Meg and Bill Meese were the ones responsible for the murders. We had ruled out Regina and Randy Appleton at this time. It was a bombshell for us to learn that information. I couldn't believe it. Totally unexpected.
Ten years after Joe, Beth, and Dennis Wellnitz were shot in cold blood, police now believe Meg Wellnitz wanted her parents dead and asked her friend Bill Meese to kill them.
Based upon my prior history with Meg Wellnitz, I would have never dreamed that she would have been involved in that murder of her parents and sibling. She had become that type of person not the one that I knew from before. And now all of a sudden I see her in a completely different light when she has no compassion for life.
Before they can lay charges, detectives need hard evidence against Meg and Bill.
One of the things that we learned during the investigation, they had purchased a 9mm high-power Browning automatic. We knew they had done that. They used a false ID, and they used it to make the purchase of the gun. We were able to learn that through a report from ATF, and we actually identified who sold that gun to them, and that the person that sold it to them actually identified Meg and Bill as being the ones that came in.
On February 27, 2003, detectives finally have the evidence they need.
This case was presented to an Adair County grand jury, and the grand jury indicted both Meg Wellnitz and Bill Meese.
Meg is arrested at her home in Lexington, but refuses to speak to police. Bill, who is serving a 12-year sentence for the murder for hire plot, is ready to talk.
During his statement, he certainly indicated to us Meg Wellnitz was involved in the planning. This was done at her urging. This was her idea, and that she wanted it done.
We agreed that she wanted to have her parents killed. She claimed the estate was worth $1 million. She would give me 10% of that estate in exchange for killing her parents.
We had the motivation being money. What we learned was that Meg and Bill drove from Lexington that morning down to Columbia, and that Meg gave Bill the key to the front door. She stays in the car. She does not go into the house.
I walked through the house, the back room, showed him out of the back room. I engaged him, fired on him. He came toward me and I continued firing. He fell. I went upstairs, into the hall. Elizabeth was standing next to her bed. I engaged and fired on her. She fell. I came back down the hall. I entered Dennis's grave. He was sitting on his back. I engaged him. I emptied the magazine of weapons. He was still sitting up at that time. He broke one down the floor, got on the floor, and shot him in the back. I then went into the back bedroom and into the closet and got the firebox, took the box down in the car, took off the clothes I was wearing. I put all of those items as well as firearm 3 magazines in a black plastic trash bag. I put the black trash bag in the trash container and drove back to that. We got back to Lexington about 6:30 or 7:30.
It truly was a chilling account of just how cold-hearted he was, not only in doing it, but in talking about it.
Police confront Meg with Bill's confession.
She agreed to then give a statement. When we met with Meg, my observation and my perception of her demeanor and her statements to us certainly was not one of any remorse. It was a matter-of-fact description of what she had done some years prior in having her family killed.
I don't think I could have ever thought of Meg committing a murder or being a part of a murder plan. I know that life insurance might seem like a lot of money, but when you put that cost on lives, it's nothing. It's unfathomable to think that she considered their lives that invaluable.
Bill Meese was convicted by a jury of 3 counts of murder, robbery, and burglary, and he was sentenced to death. Meg Wellnitz was convicted of complicity to 3 counts of murder, complicity to robbery, and complicity to burglary, and she received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 25 years.
It's very disturbing to know that this little sweet girl that I remember has been the one that actually played such a big role in this murder. Meg orchestrated one of the most horrendous crimes that you could imagine, killing your mom and dad and also your brother.
I do not think that Meg receiving 25 years was a just sentence. I think she was as guilty as Bill Meese, and I think she should have been given the same type of sentence as Bill Meese, death.
For their daughter to have been the killer was about the most unexpected thing. It was such a shock to try to wrap your head around how could a daughter carry out or be the mastermind. It does not get any more heartless than that, and it does not get any more sickening than that. She didn't deserve to ever be free again.
In 2014, having served 8 years of her life sentence, Meg is found dead in her cell of an apparent suicide.
I certainly could never have imagined that things would have turned out this way. I just feel sad that Joe wasn't able to live out his life the way that he deserved to and continue to give back to the community that he was a part of, and be a father to Dennis and to Meg even. I wish I had gotten to spend more time with him.
It's just hard to understand sometimes why things happen and why they had to lose their lives in that way when they had so much ahead of them. It was a very tragic ending.
The community lost a cherished family. I mean, we miss them as friends. We miss them as part of the community. They were just fine folks.
A selfless and caring mother of 3.
She always thought about other people. She was just a bright light shining.
Viciously murdered in her own home.
Her bedroom was incredibly blood-soaked, unlike I'd ever seen before.
There was anger involved in this crime.
I remember just screaming.
Investigators are sent down a rabbit hole of suspects.
She didn't like him, she didn't trust him.
It raised a red flag that there might be some sort of affair going on.
She was jealous of her life, of what she had.
There was clearly bad blood between them.
Every lead appears to turn into a dead end.
It just stalled.
That was disheartening.
Until a surprising witness comes forward.
It was unbelievable.
It was the break we were looking for.
Exposing a killer no one saw coming.
I was pretty shocked.
I just remember being sick to my stomach.
Cortland Township lies in the heart of Michigan.
It's fairly rural, nice, pleasant, kind of a good hometown feel. It's one of those areas that everybody gets along, and when you're driving by their house, they're waving at you, and it's just peaceful and quiet.
This quaint community is stunned on Saturday, August 5th, 2006, when the Kent County Sheriff's Office receives a 911 call.
Emergency.
My daughter, we just found her in bed, and she's got a lash on her arm, and she's all bloody.
Just before 5 o'clock, we received a call of a potential suicide at the Pagel residence.
Officers are immediately dispatched to the home of 41-year-old Renee Pagel.
We were met by Renee's stepmother and her father. They were both just in shock. Renee's father indicated that his daughter was in her bedroom. When I first walked into the bedroom, I observed Renee laying on the bed. I could just remember seeing all the blood-soaked sheets, her shirt. There's blood on her face. It was obvious that Renee Pagel was deceased, and it wasn't a suicide. This was a homicide.
Officers secure the scene as homicide detectives arrive to investigate.
Her bedroom was incredibly blood-soaked, unlike I'd ever seen before.
The bed was covered with blood. There was blood spatter on the walls, on the ceiling.
She was stabbed multiple times. I was pretty shocked by the amount of wounds that she had. When I looked at her hand, I saw a large laceration almost in the middle of her hand to be, in my opinion, a defensive wound. Renee was in the fight for her life. Unfortunately, she had lost.
For detectives, the viciousness of the attack is a clue itself.
It appears to us it's a crime of passion. Somebody has something against this victim, so much so that they want to brutalize this person as much as they possibly could.
This was personal.
Somebody went into that residence to murder Renee.
Who in Renee's life would want to attack her and could be capable of such violence? Born in 1965, Renee's spirit was always full of joy.
Renee was the most generous person I have ever known. She loved life. She was always smiling.
Renee Pagel devoted her life to helping others.
She was a nurse practitioner. She had done medical mission trips around the world, and then she also worked at a homeless clinic here in town. She always thought about other people.
Renee's greatest joy was being a mother of 3.
She loved her kids so much. She was a great mom.
Recently separated from Michael, her husband of 10 years, Renee shared custody of her children while always remaining a devoted mother.
The last couple years, because she wanted to be home with her kids and wanted to have some more normal hours, she chose to teach at a technical center.
Even as a teacher, Renee found new ways to help people.
One of her students had come into class one day and was really down, and Renee said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "Well, my dad is dying. He needs a kidney." And so Renee agreed to give her kidney to this man who she had never met. She was just so selfless. And it manifested itself in so many ways.
Renee had undergone the kidney transplant surgery just 5 days before her stunning death.
So she was already in a weakened state when she was attacked.
Could the killer have timed the attack, knowing that Renee would be recuperating? Detectives look closer at her injuries, hoping they'll reveal telling details about the murder weapon.
It seemed to be a very strong and well-made knife, and large. Just the amount of damage it did to the victim's body, it was at least an inch and a half blade that was wide.
There's no sign of the knife, but forensic technicians searched the bedroom for other evidence.
There was large amounts of blood that our scientific support unit had to collect, and they collected trace evidence like hairs and fibers for testing.
Detectives continue to search the rest of the home.
What struck me about this case that was kind of odd, there was no other areas in the house that were disturbed, that were bloody or anything tracked to the home. It seemed to be very honed in on just her bedroom.
It really kind of puzzled us as investigators. It was the most bizarre scene I've ever been on. This person, in my opinion, had to know that they had to cover their tracks, and I think it was planned, and they thought this out ahead of time.
As forensics continue their work, detectives speak with Renee's parents.
Her father, obviously, he was extremely upset. But he had just found out his daughter brutally murdered.
Detectives ask her father to help them put together a picture of Renee's last known movements.
He last saw her the night before around 4 or 5 in the evening when he was picking up the children and bringing them to their father's house, who lived approximately 15 to 20 minutes away from Renee.
With Renee's children safe with their father at the time of the murder, she was home alone.
He told us he spoke with her on the phone around 8 or 9 in the evening, just checked in on her because obviously he had a lot of concern of her health.
Based on the state of the body, detectives believe Renee was murdered sometime between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. They ask her parents who Renee might have seen last.
Her father talked to me about a tenant, Mike Decker, who was an acquaintance of Renee that has been living on the property for approximately a year and a half, 2 years. Also, he did speak about a contentious divorce with her husband, Michael, that she was going through. Mike wanted full custody. Mike wanted the home. Mike wanted to not work and have Renee work and be the provider. So that obviously piqued my interest.
Could either of these men have possibly wanted Renee dead? Detectives know they have to hit the ground running right away.
We have to find out who all these people are and go and start to question them to try to find out where they were on the night of the murder.
Coming up, investigators uncover an ominous obsession.
There was a lot of writings about his hatred for Renee.
Alarming secrets.
The ceiling had a hidden compartment.
Renee told me how betrayed she felt.
She was extremely upset. She was very hurt by this.
And the truth blindsides everyone.
We've never had a break like this.
It was, you're not gonna believe this. Just disbelief.
I'm still reeling from that one.
Detectives in a small Michigan town are investigating the vicious murder of 41-year-old mother of 3, Renee Pagel. Police are looking into 2 possible suspects, her tenant and her estranged husband. They first turn their attention to Renee's ex, Michael Pagel.
In the beginning, they seemed like your average all-American couple.
She did tell me that she did love him. She wanted marriage in a family, and he was the opportunity.
She looked at him, I think the words were the knight in shining armor. And speaking to friends of the family, they described Michael as a fantastic dad, that he was always about his children. Nobody said anything bad about him.
Married life seemed like a dream come true until cracks started to appear.
When I interviewed numerous people, I was told that Mike didn't want a full-time job. Mike wanted to be at home with the kids and let Renee do everything and support him. They were just having a lot of issues back and forth with one another. In early 2005, Mike abruptly surprised Renee with divorce papers.
She was very shocked and just sickened to the core.
There had been some turmoil in the past between them, but in her mind, things were actually getting better. They were kind of turning around, so she was blindsided by it.
She said to me, he expected, I mean expected, the house, the kids, and $2,000 a month.
In June 2006, just 7 weeks before she was murdered, Renee and Michael had their day in divorce court.
When the judge ruled in her favor and said that she got the kids, she got the house, and he was going to have to get a better paying job, something flipped in him.
Was Michael so angered by the ruling that he killed Renee in a furious rage?
There were a lot of things that put him at the top of our list as a potential suspect that had killed Renee.
Detectives go to question Michael.
When we arrived at Mike's house, he was not there. His mother said that he should be back shortly. And I said, just want to get an idea of what were you guys doing last night? And she said, well, Mike had the kids. They were having a fortnight in the living room where Mike had set up some pillows and some blankets. Then she stated about 8 in the morning, she and Michael had a brief conversation, and then they went about their day. So basically, she was giving him an alibi that he was home all night with the kids.
As police finish the interview with his mother, Michael arrives.
I explained to him that something had happened to Renee, and we would like to speak to you about this. When Michael was told that she had passed away, there was no reaction out of him. And immediately, without me even going any further, Michael reached into his wallet and gave me an attorney card and said, "Yeah, I've been told not to talk to the police. Here's my attorney." So I thought that was extremely odd that Michael didn't want to dig further into what happened to Renee. After consulting with his divorce attorney, he told investigators he wouldn't answer any questions.
Michael's reticence to cooperate is a red flag. And on August 6th, the day after Renee's murder, police arrive at his home with a search warrant.
We're looking for any type of knife that may have been used during the murder. We took a lot of knives from the house, but we found no knives that matched the length and the size and the different characteristics of the knife that was used.
Police also collect hair samples and fingerprints from Michael.
We wanted to get photos of his body to make sure that there was no cuts or anything on him. We wanted to look at clothing to see if there was any blood trace evidence anywhere.
All the forensic evidence that we collected, we never found anything that was useful in our investigation.
All the knives in his home were examined, and there was nothing to link them to this crime.
We had no murder weapon. We had no real evidence. There was nothing. It was clean.
So when we left that search warrant, I would say we really came out empty-handed. We didn't have anything to tie this murder to Mike Pagel.
Despite his potential motive, Michael Pagel drops off detectives' list of suspects, while news of Renee's violent death quickly spreads across town.
Her friend called me and said, "Chris, Renee's dead." It was surreal. I remember curling up in a fetal position and just screaming. I screamed. I was angry.
As her friends and loved ones struggle with her death, Renee's autopsy report comes in.
Cause of death was blunt force trauma, homicide. It was a large, heavy-duty knife that was used on her. The autopsy revealed upwards of 50 stab wounds. There were numerous lacerations to the hands and the feet, suggesting defensive wounds.
She was stabbed over 50 times. I'm still reeling from that one. It was so brutal.
Detectives continue their investigation and now focus their attention on Renee's tenant, Mike Decker.
She had this barn that had an upstairs apartment, and he was a renter.
The barn was about 75 yards away from the main home. He could have been involved, he could have been a witness, he could have overheard something. One of her friends believed that the week of her surgery, Renee was going to have pizza with Mike Decker, and that she felt that there was some type of maybe a relationship going on. So that sparked our interest. I mean, if he's having a relationship with Renee, did something happen to cause him to get upset and potentially do this horrific crime? We had to find him immediately.
Two days into the investigation of Renee Pagel's murder, detectives have a possible suspect. Her tenant, Mike Decker, who's rumored to be romantically involved with Renee. Detectives interview Mike at his apartment on Renee's property.
At first, I kind of thought loner, 30-year-old gentleman, unemployed, living above a barn. I thought that was kind of odd. When we were speaking to Mr. Decker, we asked him if he's having a relationship with Renee, romantic or whatnot. Mike said that the relationship is more of a friendship or a kindness thing, no romantic involvement. He denied having any dinner with Renee over the past week. He stated that it was actually a month or two before he suggested that they go out for pizza just as friends, but Renee had turned that down because she was busy.
Police ask Mike Decker where he was on the night of the murder.
He stated that he went into a local city to eat by himself, drove back probably between 8 or 9. When he arrived at home, he watches a little bit of TV and then goes to bed between 1 and 2 in the morning.
Detectives ask him if he heard anything that night, especially after what they had found at the crime scene.
We did locate a tire track and a footwear impression in Renee's driveway.
He denied hearing anything from Renee's house.
Mike tells police he didn't notice anything unusual the next morning either.
He woke up in the morning around 9 or 10 and then went to meet with his family to go see a bike race. Part of the problem with Mike Decker's alibi, even though he was cooperative through this process, he was on the property when this murder happened.
With no one to corroborate his alibi, police get a warrant to search Mike's apartment.
We seized his pipe from his sink because we wanted to see if there was any blood or trace evidence in there, and then found a couple of large knives.
The evidence is rushed to the crime lab for analysis.
The knives and the pipe forensically did not show anything. There were no signs of blood.
We found no knives that matched the type of knife that was used.
But still, Mike cannot be ruled out. A week after the homicide, detectives interview him again, this time at the sheriff's office.
He showed no issues of concern of us looking at him as a potential suspect, from gathering any type of physical evidence from him. We even offered him a polygraph, and Mr. Decker submitted to that also and passed without any deceit.
With nothing tying Mike Decker to the crime, investigators let him go. Searching for any further clues about Renee, detectives reach out to her parents once again, and in turn, get a lead on a new suspect, Renee's own sister, Michelle.
Renee's father stated that the relationship between Renee and Michelle was strained. He mentioned that Michelle was jealous of Renee's life, of what she had. She wanted a successful career, a family, a home, all of those things.
Renee and Michelle's problems went beyond sibling rivalry.
During the divorce, Renee's attorney was able to subpoena the phone records of Michael Pagel, so he turned those over to Renee. When she examined phone records, she learned that Mike and Michelle were talking frequently, so she was extremely upset. She was very hurt by this.
There was such significant communication between Mike Pagel and the sister Michelle that it raised a red flag to us right away that there might be some sort of affair going on.
Renee told me how betrayed she felt by her sister. She really struggled with that.
During the interviews with numerous people, it was mentioned that Michelle potentially was having a relationship with Michael. Once I learned that, it's obviously somebody we wanted to look at.
Michelle is brought in for an interview. And though she says that she is saddened by her sister's death, her answers raise eyebrows with investigators.
She didn't speak very highly of Renee. She was not happy at all the way that Renee was handling the divorce.
Michelle clearly took Mike's side in it and kind of put her sister in the bad light. She felt that Mike was a good father, and it was her sister that was really trying to take advantage of him.
We did ask her if she was in a relationship or had a relationship with Michael, and she completely denied it.
Detectives ask Michelle where she was the night of the murder.
She said she was working into the evening, and that evening she was home with her roommate. Basically, she was stating that she was home the evening of the murder. Michelle did take a polygraph, and she was found to be truthful and did not appear to have any involvement in the homicide.
With Michelle all but ruled out, investigators discover that she isn't the only family member Renee had issues with.
When I spoke with Renee's parents, it was mentioned that Michael, her soon-to-be ex-husband, had a brother. The brother was Charles Pago. They called him Bo. And they said that he was very strange, very odd. He and Renee did not get along. Renee didn't like him. She didn't trust him.
When detectives dig deeper, they uncover something troubling.
We learned from a close friend of Renee that he had been married numerous times, and she believed that maybe Bo had murdered his last wife.
Was Bo a killer? And had he now killed again?
That obviously raised some red flags for us as investigators, and that's somebody we wanted to speak with very quickly.
Detectives investigating the vicious stabbing of Renee Pagel are looking at her estranged husband's brother, Bo Pagel.
Bo was married 3 times in the past, and one of his ex-wives died under suspicious circumstances.
One of Renee's friends gives a statement to police, claiming that she believed Bo may have killed his ex-wife.
Obviously, what really sent us his way was the potential murder of his last wife, so that had our attention.
Detectives must determine if Bo could actually be a killer. They look deeper into his background.
Bo was a loner, lived at home with his mom. We learned that he was on-the-road trucker, and he traveled all over the country. He would be gone days at a time.
Investigators also look closer at Bo and Renee's fractured relationship.
There was clearly bad blood between him and Renee, dating back years, going back to the wedding.
We found out that Bo refused to be in the wedding. He was going to be the best man. He did not like her, thought she was not good for Mike, and he didn't approve of it whatsoever. He was outspoken to Michael about even marrying Renee. And I think the relationship between Bo and Mike was really more of an estranged relationship for the 10 years that Mike and Renee were married.
But after Renee and Michael's separation, everything changed.
I do know that once Mike filed for divorce, he and Bo rekindled that relationship and became pretty close.
Bo was, I believe, happy that Renee was now out of the picture and he could have his brother back.
Could Bo have wanted Renee permanently out of Michael's life? Detectives bring him in for questioning.
So we interviewed Bo, and he denied any knowledge of the murder, denied any involvement. Bo had said that through the week he was on the road trucking. He got home Thursday night.
Bo's alibi was that he was essentially across the state. He had driven a route the day of the homicide. He had gotten back around 6 o'clock and had gone out with some friends for dinner.
And then afterwards, he stated he went home, spoke to his daughter, and then went to bed.
And then the next morning got up and went canoeing with his daughter.
We contacted his work. We spoke to the family that he actually had dinner with that Friday evening to account for they were with him, what restaurant, until what time.
It pretty much matched up.
Though most of his story checks out, no one can confirm that Bo was at home at the time of Renee's murder. Needing more information, detectives reach out to Bo's daughter.
We confirmed with her that they went on the canoe trip in the morning.
Bo's daughter also puts to rest any suspicion that Bo was responsible for her mother's death.
She gave us details about her mother that we didn't know. She was a diabetic, she had some blood sugar problems, and she really didn't care for going to the doctor. So she didn't seek the medical help that she needed, and that ultimately is what resulted in her death. She did not suspect Bo of doing anything.
Though Bo's alibi isn't ironclad, there is nothing concrete to link him to Renee's murder, and he is released. It's been 6 weeks since the homicide. and the investigation has ground to a halt.
The reason that we were stuck is because there was no physical evidence that would help tie any one person to this crime. We looked at every person. The estranged husband, his brother, Bo, Renee's sister, and Renee's tenant. And there was nothing to link them to this crime.
Police continue investigating for many months. But with no fresh leads, the case goes cold.
It just stalled. There was a point where I felt that we would never have a conclusion in this case.
It was just sad that we couldn't bring closure to Renee and to her family.
As the months went by, I was just like, what is going on?
Once the months turns into years, that was disheartening.
For 13 years, there are no new developments in the case. But through it all, Renee's best friend never gives up hope.
We created a website in the year 2007, and it was a really therapeutic way for people to come and grieve and share stories. And that website was very effective in getting the word out about Renee's murder, doing whatever it took to find justice for Renee.
In a stunning turn of events, on November 18th, 2019, Chris Crandall receives a surprising message on social media.
Mike's brother, Bo, sent me a friend request. And of course, I was very startled. And it was just after that I got a message from Bo. All of a sudden, after all these years, Bo wanted to talk.
Years after Renee Pagel is viciously stabbed to death, her best friend receives a message from Renee's brother-in-law, Bo Pagel, wanting to talk.
And of course, I called the police and let them know that Bo had contacted me.
So we arranged to have the conversation between Chris and Bo recorded.
As a former suspect in Renee's murder, was Bo about to confess?
He called me clearly wanting to let it be known that Mike was losing it. Bo was afraid that he would be Mike's next victim. And I said to Bo, who do you think Mike's first victim was? And he danced around that and wouldn't answer it.
And Bo said, I believe Mike will kill me.
And it was then that I was entertaining the idea that Mike was not so innocent.
I listened to that conversation and was very concerned. Bo believes Mike's capable of killing somebody. We felt this was a big break. We now knew that Bo may have information about whether or not Mike did commit murder.
On February 3rd, 2020, 2 months after his conversation with Chris Crandall, police formally interview Bo.
I just asked him to tell us what he knew about anybody being involved in Renee's murder, and he quickly told us that Mike Pagel was responsible for Renee's murder.
It's a stunning revelation.
It was the break we were looking for. It was the big piece of information that we needed.
Knowing this is their chance to finally solve Renee's murder, police get an official statement from Bo.
Bo laid out the story for us. Back in 2011, Bo and Mike decided to go out. Mike grabbed a 6-pack of beer, and they just drove around and talked as brothers. And they stopped over the top of one bridge over a small river, and in the midst of that conversation, Mike produced a bag, and inside the bag was a knife that was wrapped in a cloth, and Mike made the comment to Bo of, "This is how I finalized my divorce." which was a complete shock to Bo. And it immediately made Bo angry. He said, I believed you for all these years, we've supported you, and come to find out you're the one responsible. I can't believe you would have done that. And I think this made Mike angry. He expected Bo to congratulate him. So the way Bo described it was out of frustration. Mike took the knife and threw it into the river. Bo described it as about a 12-inch long, bigger knife, and it appeared to be a very strong, sturdy knife.
Investigators get Bo to show them exactly where Michael had thrown the knife.
There was quite a bit of old metal, various pieces of cars and other things inside the river, and in my opinion, that wasn't a safe diving environment. We had to find another means to search the bottom of the river.
Police wonder if they will be able to recover a knife that has been in the water for 9 years. Then, one of the detectives comes up with an idea.
It's called a rare earth magnet. The magnet is something that I've had at home, and it just came to mind as an option for a way to search the watery area and to grab whatever metal pieces were on the bottom of the river.
It was tremendously impressive for him to come up with his own homemade magnet device. And, you know, he concocted his own fishing line and pulling it through the stream, which is remarkable.
Police spend 3 days painstakingly dragging the riverbed with no success.
So we were on our last few passes of the river, and I began pulling toward my side, and then it was, you're not gonna believe this, just disbelief. The knife was stuck to the magnet, and it was exactly as Bo described.
It was late in the day, I want to say 3 or 4 o'clock, and got the phone call. He got the knife. I'm like, no, are you kidding me? He got the knife, no.
And this is the magnet and the knife exactly as we found it.
It was awesome. It was everything you could hope for when you're investigating a case, to get that piece of evidence that you know you need, that you really weren't sure if it was going to be there, but there it is.
Police now need to confirm if the knife found matches the knife used in Renee Pagel's murder.
We brought it down to the medical examiner's office. They viewed it and instantly said, absolutely, it's consistent with the injuries that are on Renee's body. We were very confident we had the murder weapon.
Unbelievable. We've never had a break like this. We got the needle in the haystack by finding the knife, and now we had a murder weapon that backed up what a witness said.
It allowed us to validate Bo's statement that that knife was thrown in that water by Mike Pagel.
On February 6th, 2020, 13 years after Renee's death, Michael Pagel is officially charged with her murder.
So this case was going to hinge a lot on the testimony of Bo, but it's still circumstantial evidence. And is the jury going to believe him or not?
In the midst of that, the defense attorneys asked if we would consider a plea offer. When someone asks for a plea, it usually means that they're willing to tell the truth. And in this case, that was one of the conditions, is we wanted to hear the truth as part of the plea agreement.
The prosecution agrees to a plea deal of second-degree murder and a minimum of 25 years in prison.
We wanted to get a term of years to make sure he was old enough that he would never harm anyone again.
On May 20th, 2020, 55-year-old Michael Pagel agrees to plead guilty to second-degree murder, avoiding a trial by jury. But at his plea hearing, Michael suddenly turns the case on its head.
It was unbelievable. And I just remember being sick to my stomach.
After 13 years of investigating the heinous murder of Renee Pagel, her estranged husband is finally being charged for the brutal crime. But at his plea hearing, Michael makes an admission that takes everyone by surprise.
I hired my brother, Charles Bagel, to kill Renee Bagel. Charles Bagel murdered Renee Bagel.
We were all absolutely shocked when he said that his brother did this.
Mike maintained the fact that Bo was the one responsible. He admitted that he had orchestrated it and that he had planned it, but insisted that Bo was the one that actually did the stabbing, which was a complete shock to us. We had investigated and we found no evidence, nothing to directly tie Bo Pagel to this murder.
Had Bo been hiding his involvement all along? While detectives take another look at him, they also dig for more evidence against Michael. And after several searches of his home, they make a surprising discovery.
At Mike's house, we found the ceiling had a hidden compartment. When we took this down, we found 3 hard drives in this hidden compartment.
Investigators spend time decoding the contents of Michael's hard drives, and what they find is chilling.
In those hard drives, there was journaling.
I would call it strange. It appeared to be written by almost 2 different personalities, one that would talk back and forth to the other.
He talked about planning to divorce, how much he hated her.
There was a lot of writings about his dislike and his hatred for Renee.
Then, weeks later, police track down a crucial witness.
We uncovered a friend who had said that he had gifted a knife to Michael that was substantially similar to the one that was actually found.
And he admitted that he gave it to Mike as a gift, and it was delivered directly to Mike Pagel. So that helped us put the knife in Mike's hands.
So now you have a knife that was found in the river that now a friend is saying had given to Michael and not to Bo.
While the evidence is circumstantial, police believe it strengthens their case even further against Michael.
There was nothing that could back up Michael's story in terms of physical evidence, any other witnesses, anything else other than his word about it. Whereas Bo at least had stuff to back it up. His alibi backed up, and the physical evidence that he provided backed it up. So there's just absolutely nothing that shows that Bo did this. This was Michael Pagel. This was all him that committed this murder that night.
Investigators conclude what likely happened on the night of Renee's murder.
When the children were sleeping, he snuck out of his house and he went over to Renee's.
It's pretty well known that she donated a kidney.
Obviously, she wasn't strong at this point.
She was asleep in bed, and he walked in with that knife and brutally stabbed her.
I believe that Mike no doubt planned this out.
There's no way you leave a crime scene that clean and it's not carefully planned. How he absolutely didn't leave a blood drop, a fingerprint, a mark, any physical evidence.
Bo tells us about Mike commenting that he had worn coveralls and galoshes. So he had taken precaution to not get his clothes bloody, and that he had removed those items and then put them in a garbage bag and left. And that the clothes were later burned.
He's not a stupid man. He knew enough to cover his tracks. He went in there purposely. He had an intent, he had a purpose, and he went in there to kill her, and he did.
There was anger involved in this crime. This was evil.
But why would Michael kill Renee?
I believe Mike Pagel was very upset with the way the divorce was proceeding, that he didn't get sole custody of the children, that he didn't get the family home. Things just weren't going his way.
He's got motive, and if anybody's got rage, it's the about-to-be ex-husband who's not getting what he wanted.
I think that the writing was on the wall for him that this was the end.
On October 5th, 2020, Michael Pagel is sentenced to 20.
कोई चावल रत ना दे असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वत ना दे असी माया टुर जाना असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वत ना दे लवे मोरोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे तेरे पीछे कानू रुल दे जे कोई तेरे जे आयो रोंदा खड़े उत्ते जा बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा हाल फकीरां दा दिल नूं वे चंगा लगदा एक माई कश्मीरां दा दिल नूं चंगा लगदा दिल नूं वे चंगा लगदा एक माई कश्मीरां दा सब चिलसा जिंदगी ते मेल चना रही जिंदगी ते फिर मिलसा जिंदगी ते मेल चना जिंदगी ते मेल चना रही जिंदगी ते फिर मिलसा खाली बेचा पीती सोने लोकां ने दुनिया तबाह की थी सोने लोकां ने दुनिया तबाह की थी गड्डियां दे काले नी असी हुण टुर वचले तुसी रब दे हवाले नी असी हुण टुर वचले असी हुण टुर वचले तुसी रब दे हवाले नी कोई चावल रत ना दे असी माया टुर जाना तुसी मालक वत ना दे असी माया टुर जाना असी माया टुर जाना घोड़कड़े उत्ते जा बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना डोला अखियां वेला बैठा आया सी मेहमान जना आया सी